you go. This is Emily C., my new bestie.
I hate the idea that someone out there hates me. I even hate thinking that Al-Qaeda hates me. I think if they got to know me, they wouldn't hate me.
This stole the show. Emily C. was phenomenal.
There's something you need to know.
What?
You're doing great.
Look at my baby. Here she is. Emily. 10 out of 10. Huge fan.
I see Emily C says 123. I trust her. She's really good.
Listen, Turtle. You gotta watch your language. I'm already live. So you need to follow the FCC guidelines.
She destroyed, left nothing in her path. It was so good.
Hi, friends. I'm so happy to be doing this right now. First of all, you guys are like my favorite people because this conversation in the chat right now is the best thing I've ever eavesdropped on. I feel like I'm eavesdropping when you guys are in the chat before the show starts. Like once it starts, now we're here. Now I feel like I'm a part of it. But the way Cusco Wright just said, I can't wait to tell Emily we fixed it. I feel like I'm just back there like eavesdropping on you guys talking. But okay, so for anybody who's watching this on replay and doesn't know what I'm talking about, I need to go through the progression of how this just happened. So Georgia Jules said, I get so excited with a document, not dump, and Emily going over it. I forgot what she called it because she hates dump. And then Cusco Wright said, call it a drop, which is what we have been calling it. But then Cusco Wright said, if we're sea creatures, maybe call it a splash. And I love that. So now we have a FOIA splash forever. I'm probably still going to say dump by accident. But thanks, Mitchell, for coming from Tennessee. I actually like kind of felt bad. I get weird. Like I watch everything on like replay or live and like back and forth and this and that. So I feel like I get to everybody, but I don't want to ever feel like I'm like taking people away. So don't tell me you came from Tennessee, but I hope that they're having fun over there. And E Chase just said, I was so excited when I saw this pop up. I was so excited when I saw this pop up in my brain because I was not planning to do this at all. And then I opened up the new FOIA splash. It's FOIA Friday, which I'll talk about in 1 second. And I saw that there was an interview transcript from Karen's interview with Ted Daniel. And I was like, well, I could sit here. When I read something, I either need to have it read to me or read it out loud to myself. Like when I read in my head, it takes me twice as long because I have to like go back 17 different times because in my head, I'm like, am I paying attention right now? I don't know if I'm paying attention to what I'm reading. So I'll be like reading and my brain is going, I don't know if I'm like paying attention, if I'm retaining this. What just happened? And then I go back and I read it and I'm like, oh yeah, I was paying attention to that. And then I like read it. It's a whole mess inside my brain. So it's either out loud or somebody read it to me. And I thought as long as I'm going to sit here and like talk to myself, I might as well hang out with you guys. So here we are. And I'm very excited to be here. So it's FOIA Friday, FOIA Splash Friday. And on Fridays, I want to be very clear about this for anybody who may be confused on the internet and get angry at me for the FOIA fund because they're confused. The documents that are coming out every other Friday, bi-weekly, are the notice of discovery documents that are not affiliated with the FOIA. We're not paying for them with FOIA fund money that we're not even asking for anymore at this moment because we have everything funded that we wanted to put out at this moment. If you know what I'm responding to. But these documents, I do organize on the FOIA site, which I will have up for you by tomorrow morning. I wanted to do that before this, and I have time blindness, and that did not happen. But these are not FOIA funded, if that makes sense for anybody who might have been confused out there. But so what the notice of discovery documents are is the discovery that Karen Reed's team got in order of how they got it along the way. And we're getting, I said this last time too, we're getting into this very kind of weird place in the FOIA. So the beginning, like the first splash of notice of discovery documents was like the major stuff. It was like interviews, the investigation, like the things that you need to like bring a case. Debatable if that was even that, but what they claimed could bring a case. And then as we've progressed through, we've now gotten into this just very weird place. So I want to show you what's in this first before we before we take a deep dive into the interview transcript. I have too many windows open already. Good God. Okay, there. Nope. I need a second screen, but I don't know how to use one. But I think my life would be easier if I did that, because then I could just open this full screen on a second screen, right? Okay, so every one of these splashes, splish splash, splishy splash, every one of these dumps comes with a little cover letter that tells us what's in the splash. And this one is the notice of discovery 61, 62, and 63. And I haven't really gone through any of it yet, so I don't know what this means. Cover sheet for video from, oh, I do know what this is actually. This is the one that I looked at. These are, if you've been in Boozy Beauty's lives, where she talks about Paul DiGiampetro, there is a cover sheet for them just suddenly finding more Higgins videos on Paul DiGiampetro's secret stash of videos. Yeah, Tully wrote a little cover letter about that. I don't know what these police reports are. I guess we'll find out sometime. This is one thing that we're going to read tonight, transcript of an interview with Karen Reed by Ted Daniel, dated February 9th, 2025. And then this is what I mean by then we're just getting into some weird stuff. There's 37 pages of emails sent to Special Assistant District Attorney, who's not a Assistant District Attorney, so that's a weird way to refer to him. Hank Brennan, I would call him a special prosecutor, but sure. And then there's voicemails left for Special Assistant District Attorney Hank Brennan. And why I say those are weird, I haven't opened these ones, but the last one was like if you dug to the depths of Twitter and pulled up like the most unhinged theories that you could come up with, those were the last emails. So I'm assuming that these will be similar. In 62, these are exciting. There's the second part. Okay, this was actually kind of funny. So this is called part 2 of Karen's interview with Ted Daniels, but it happened before. So it was a time drift. Part 2 is when they're driving around in the car, if you remember that footage from Boston 25. And then there's the transcript of an interview with William, Janet, Nathan Reed, depending on how long it takes us to get through the other stuff. I don't know if we'll get to that tonight, but we'll see. Maybe we're just going to power through all night. Then we just get into more unhinged emails, I'm assuming, more unhinged voicemails, and then just some really unnecessary stuff. There is transcripts of A Body in the Snow, all the episodes. Judd Welcher's PowerPoint. Can't wait to look at that. Expert contracts could be interesting, just to kind of see how they laid them out. There's some more letters to Hank, Special Assistant District Attorney. Hannah Knowles's CV. Ian Whiffin's PowerPoint. That's kind of interesting because there's information in it that he just chose to skip over during the trial. And then Alessi was like, hey, how about that picture right there where it shows that John's phone was in the house? How come you didn't tell us about that one? And then there's this. Transcript of Garrett Wing's appearance on Melanie Little's YouTube channel. Apparently you need to pay a court, whatever, what do you call them? Court reporter? Good. It's late. Apparently my tax dollars are funding a court reporter to transcribe Melanie Little's incredible, unbelievable, best interview, like eye-opening interview to date in terms of like progressing our knowledge at the time of what was going on here. Her interview with Garrett Wing. Somebody should tell Norfolk County that YouTube has transcripts. They're not always right, but like they're close. And then you could just go through and make some little changes, but spend my tax dollars however you please. So yeah, that's cool. That's Mel's second shout out in these documents. So way to go, Melanie. And that's that. I will, like I said, have it up for you by tomorrow. If you have ants in your pants and you want to see all of those now, DD Suspicious Sauce on Twitter has them already ready to download for you. So that's that. Craftastical offers the idea of that we can't use that word because I don't even know how to pronounce that. Tranche. I like batch of documents. Tranche. Am I saying that right? Tranche. Tranche dressing. It's been a long day. Also, I know that you're not here to hear me talk about my day, but if you're local, I went to Wardsbury Farm today. If you have kids and you're local, what a great place to just be out in the sun. And okay, thank you. Whew. There's a big playground there. There's like two of those. They're not trampolines and they're not bouncy houses. They're like this enormous bouncy mattress thing. Carter had a blast on it. And then there's a little market and they have like sandwiches and smoothies, and Carter didn't last long enough for us to enjoy any of those, but I saw a lot of families having like a nice little picnic. Maybe someday we will get to that level where we can be in public for long enough to be able to do that. And one thing I wanted to say before we get into this, if you're not local, there's something you need to know about Norfolk County. And this is not a scientific fact. This is my own data, but it's true. Norfolk County has its own weather system that none of the, even within Norfolk County, there is like weather patterns that happen that don't happen the town over. And it is the craziest thing. I say that because today it was a beautiful sunny day. There was literally not a cloud in the sky. And then all of a sudden, it just started like monsoon pouring. Like you couldn't even see. We were inside, luckily, because it came out of nowhere. I like looked out the window and like sheets of rain were pouring down. My husband works in the city, which is like 30 minutes, 45 minutes away. And when he got home, I was like, did it rain where you were today? And he was like, no, why? And I was like, I knew it. I knew this was like a Norfolk County weather pattern. And this happens all the time. So I used to teach with somebody who lived in Attleboro, which is like this way, and Malden, which is this way. And in the morning, I would wake up and I would look outside and it would be like snowing, like a blizzard. And I would text both of them and be like, "Is it snowing where you guys are?" And they're like, "No, it's like sunny outside." And there's like something about it, like you can tell this is like a Norfolk County weather pattern that doesn't exist anywhere else. There was a rainstorm once that like moved through Massachusetts and then just parked on Norfolk County for like 17 hours straight and didn't move, to the point that Norwood, which is like the town over from Canton, had a hospital, and the entire hospital had to close. This is crazy. There was a literal like full functioning hospital. Because of this one rainstorm, the entire hospital flooded so badly, they had to tear it down and rebuild it, which has still been going on for the past like 5 years. People now have bumper stickers that say like, "Finish the Norwood Hospital." But it's like the wildest thing because it wasn't raining like 50 feet this way the day that the entire hospital shut down and never opened again. So this is a very funny question, Leon Nichols. This is why this is funny. So everybody, we all know Bay Harbor Beauty, love her. She reached out to me. We did that partnership for Kelsey Fitzsimmons with her skincare, and she asked me when she was going to send me like some products to try and to talk about for you guys. She was like, "Well, what do you use right now?" And I was like, "Please don't be mad." Because when you talk to people who are like really good at skincare, okay. I was like, I use Dove soap on my face, and I use Nivea body lotion on my face. It's not face lotion. So I think here's where I think that anybody who's like in my age range will understand this. We grew up on those Noxzema, like burn your face off blue little wipes, and Seabreeze toner that you would like put on your skin in the morning and your face would burn for like 4 hours straight. And I think we all burned like everything out of our faces that was like meant to age us. It's the only thing I can think of. I hope that somebody knows what I'm talking about. Those little blue things. People would like carry them in school. You would like be in high school and like take out like a stupid blue like oil wipe. Like gross. That was gross. I think it's cute now that the kids have those little like pimple band-aids thingies that like actually treat their pimples instead of us like trying to pop them when we were children. And they like look so cute with their little like stars on their faces. Yes, the clean and clear. Everything was astringent. Like what? That doesn't even sound like it's meant for your face. That sounds like it's like a cleaning solution, like chemicals. But that's what we did. We just burned everything out of our faces that was meant to age us. Anyways, none of that is why you're here. You're here for Ted Daniels. So, the reason why I wanted to do this also is because Gretchen Voss is not my favorite person in the world right now. But I really did enjoy reading her interview transcript with Karen and just getting to see kind of like a full conversation. Even though we heard from Karen more than like most defendants between their first and second murder trials, we heard the kind of like edited version that the mainstream media put out, and there is something nice just getting to hear like how a conversation flows, how she chooses to answer questions, what details she chooses to highlight. Wait. Strong Leg 1971 said Hank's voice was astringent. That is so funny. I feel like the word astringent could be used for a lot of things, not what's supposed to go on your face, pretty much everything else. Gretchen Voss is astringent. Anyways, we like Ted Daniels a lot. He's like, for anybody who's not familiar with him, he works for Boston 25. He's one of the only kind of like mainstream media local journalists that is still doing kind of like hard-hitting journalism and like doing these like stakeouts. He just came out with a report about who was it that was abusing their overtime pay? Like highway workers or something. And he like was doing like stakeouts outside of wherever they work and like seeing what time people were leaving and exposing the kind of like underbelly of like things that are going on in Massachusetts. And imagine if like other, Mass DOT, that's what it was. Corey doesn't even live here and she knows way more than me. Mass DOT, Department of Transportation. So imagine how cool it would be if like Gretchen Voss was doing that kind of journalism or anybody else in the mainstream media so that independent journalists weren't so singled out when they do hard-hitting journalism. Yeah. So that's that. Pat's lover Bobby said, "Hi, super excited to be here. Excited for your show tonight. Thank you. Your picture makes me want to be on like a deserted island in somewhere tropical and just like in silence." That looks so peaceful. Okay, so here we go. Even though the interview dated January 29th, 2025, interesting date that he chose to do that on, comes before February, where did this go? February 9th, 2025. The February 9th one is part 1. So we're going to, the February 9th one's part 1. So we're going to start there. I'm confusing myself now. I'm going to try to read it to you guys in a way that's not like super choppy, that like sounds more conversational, but also kind of try to make it clear who's talking, which we'll get into a flow. It might take a second. I'm probably not going to be able to look at the chat very much, so talk amongst yourselves in there. And if you see any trolls, it's one single person and they're very annoying, so we could just ignore them and not give them the attention that they're asking for because they don't deserve it. I'm trying to just organize my window in a way that makes this easy to read, and I'm making it worse with every turn. Okay. Karen said, "Thanks for the tip about Wardsbury Farm. Plan to take my autistic stepson there on Sunday." It really is. Okay, and while we're on the topic, we're never getting into this. There's a smoothie there. I used to take my class there on a field trip, and every time I would like sneak away. I'd be like, everyone's with your chaperones. Okay, great. And I would go get this banana and espresso bean smoothie. There's something about it that it's like all the things your body wants. It's like caffeine and like whatever's in bananas, potassium, vitamins, good things for your body. Every time I drank it, I was like, oh, I could like conquer the world right now. So get that. I don't know what it's called, but you'll see that it's just banana and espresso beans, and it's so good. Okay, here we go. Also, you guys, if anybody hasn't seen him, I put him on the thumbnail. Ted Daniels is adorable. Don't tell him I said that. But like, he's so cute. And he's like always in his like little outfits, like his little suits. And he's just adorable. So don't let me down, Ted. You're our only hope. You're the only one left. Okay. Karen Reed, one-on-one. Tell the truth said, "You make this world a better place." You make this world a better place. I appreciate that. Also, thank you for restoring my hope in 199 super chats, because usually those are the troll. I appreciate you a lot. Tell the truth. GE9 pajamas. Okay. Karen also feels like we're reading like a movie script. Karen Reed, one-on-one. Boston 25 News, Ted Daniel. Date, February 9th, 2025. Present, Karen Reed, Alan Jackson. And you guys might remember this interview. Hank showed clips of the interview during the trial where he I don't remember exactly what she said in this one. I'll probably remember when we get to it in the transcript, but it was one of the ones that he chopped up in a cutesy way so that it could say what he wanted it to say. Like the one where Karen was like, John said I was the best person and he would never break up with me. And then it just chopped off. And it's like, you thought that was going to tell us that Karen did it? Okay. Exhibit Alley sent $9.99 and said, Happy Friday, Emily. Happy Friday, Exhibit Alley. Okay, this is the last tangent I'm going to go on, then I'm really going to start. When I was getting ready for this, I was thinking about how there was a time in my life where like Friday nights were for like getting dressed up and like going out with my friends and staying out late and like not caring about what I was doing tomorrow morning. And I was thinking about like how much has changed and how I have this like that same level of excitement that I used to have for those plans for like getting ready for this and like, oh, I'm going to get to read like FOIA splash transcripts. And that made me laugh. Like there was a time in my life where I studied abroad in Barcelona and we used to miss the midnight metro going out and we would have to take a cab. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, it's midnight. Time to read more FOIA transcripts. Okay. I'm done distracting you guys. Here we go. Boston. And thank you to the approved court transcriber, Karen A. McGill, for providing us this transcript. By Ted Daniel. Okay, so it starts off with Ted saying I like where he's starting. Full disclosure, we invited you here, but of course, it is unusual for someone who's accused of murder to do this interview or others. Why do you want to speak to the people of Massachusetts and beyond? Gretchen, take notes. That's a question. That's a great question. Gretchen started and was like, I like your outfit. Anyways. Karen said, I have nothing to hide. You hear that, people? Hear that? Probably the people that need to hear that are not listening. I have nothing to hide. My life is in the balance and it shouldn't be. And I believe sunlight is the best disinfectant. And that's been our team motto since inception. I think the more I've seen, the more information the public has, the more they know, they understand what we already know. And Ted asks, and when we talk about the public, there's so much going on in the atmosphere of this case. How much of that do you pay attention to? I pay attention a little bit to everything. The parts of the public that seem a little dirtier than others, I have close friends and people I trust that filter through it because there are threads of important information in every channel of the public on social media, just out and about in Norfolk County or in Suffolk through our emails. So what I can't manage or don't want to manage, we have a lot of it covered from people that we trust and people who support us. I like that. So you mean like the unhinged people didn't need to keep emailing Hank because they actually look at that stuff? Ted asked, people have said some pretty nasty things about you online. Do you read that? Do you process that? And Karen said, hold on. I read some of it. I don't take it to heart, but it's bothersome. But I understand why it is. There are bad, evil, nefarious players in this. There are people who are adverse to other people in this whole case, people who support me. And I've known my whole life, as everyone does, that there's not a lot of good in some people. And it doesn't drag me down in any way. It makes me feel like we're covering ground here. The nastier it gets, the more I know that we're making an impact on people that have a lot to worry about. Oh, I love these answers. Go, Karen. Ted asked, 3 years have now passed since John's death. How much do you think about him with everything that's going on? Karen said, I think about him in terms of his final days, his final weeks. I mean, we have his cell phone, which a cell phone is like a diary. I remember this part from her interview. A cell phone is like a diary, and it tracks everything you've done. And I've gone over and over his final movements, his heart rate, his injuries, the time he did everything that day, and the days leading up to it. But I've said this to other people. The time that I spent with John, 2 years, it's been now 3 since he's gone, since he was killed, and a year beyond, that eclipsed the time that I spent with him. And I have very mixed feelings, when I look back on John, because I see a lot of poor decisions that were all precursors to his death and to this nightmare that I'm living. So I remember that. You guys remember this from that interview? Poor decisions by whom? By both of us. Just drinking, being around the wrong people is chief among them. Wrong people for the weeks leading up. They wouldn't have been people I would have chosen on my own to be around. Ted asked, have you been able to start a new social life, a new dating life since this? Nosy Ted. Whoa. No. I have my friends that were always in my life. I'm closer to them than ever. And it's been kind of a bittersweet silver lining is I don't know that I ever would have known my friends and family had this in them to be there for me in this way. So I feel very fortunate. And I've met so many new people. And that's enough of a life for me right now. Is, we go out for dinner just to get out, and we end up just kind of hunkered down over a table discussing the case. Well, guess what, Karen? That's what we do too. It's all of us. We go out to dinner and then we just talk about this case. And I value their input, and I'm content with my social life, even though it's really just socializing about the case. Same girl, Sam. Ted asked, it's weird phrasing, how big is Karen Reed's inner circle? See, Karen's like, that was a weird question. My inner circle? Well, half of it's my attorneys who we just talk so much. There's always so much ground to cover. And we can't wait until the trial starts to really begin strategizing or going through the details. We do it a little bit every day. And then Alan Jackson chimes in, do it a lot every day. Good one, AJ. We do a little bit in proportion to the total. AJ's like, excuse me, Kat, I've been earning my keep. Yeah. And then AJ says, yeah, right. And Karen says, task at hand, but we cover a lot of hours every day. I probably talk to Alan and Liza each 3 or 4 times a day. And I think it makes us all feel good that we're going to be that much more prepared when we have to do this for round 2. But my inner circle, I don't know. It's bigger than it was. It's bigger than it was before, but it feels stronger than it ever was. I know that I can trust the people that I always choose to have, that I chose to have in my life. And Ted says, is that 5, 10? Karen says 10 maybe. And Ted says, okay. And Karen says, really, really tight. It's probably 5. And then he asks this question to Alan Jackson. Alan, have you ever had a client who's advocated for themselves as much as Karen does? AJ said, not as articulately or as intelligently as Karen does. Karen is an innocent woman falsely accused. She could sit back and say, go handle this. You're the professionals. Go deal with it. That is not her personality, and we're a better team for it. She has an encyclopedic knowledge of literally every single page of Discovery. I remember this from the interview. It's I've never seen anything like it. She has an analyst's brain. She's got a what is that word? Rapier? Rapier? I don't know that word. Let's look it up. Rapier. Looking it up didn't help. It says it generally refers to a long bladed sword. Corey, help. Rapier. A rapier. Is that? Are you guys? What does that mean? She's got a rapier intelligence. Seems like a word that YouTube doesn't even want me to say. Rapier. She has a sword intelligence. She's sharp. Gotcha. AJ, that's 2 steps too far. She's got a rapier intelligence. Well, so do you, AJ. Thank you for using that word. That is attendant to this type of analysis. Very, very smart, very motivated. She has no off button. I'm getting texts. I wake up, I'm on the West Coast. So I wake up, she's been awake for 3 hours. And nearly every day I feel like, damn it, I've fallen back again. I've fallen behind again. Liza and I have to sort of get back on the treadmill and catch up with where Karen is today. Back on the treadmill. Treadmill doesn't go anywhere, sir. Because she'll literally just pick something out of the blue. To me, it's out of the blue. To her brain, it makes sense for her to pull this document or pull this report and say, well, have we thought about this paragraph or this sentence or this word in this report here or there? And then we gather together as a team, me and David and Liza and Karen. We'll get on the phone and talk through it. So she's been more than any other client I've ever seen, any other client I've ever met. She's been at the center of her own defense. She knows she didn't do this. She's motivated to make sure that the truth comes out. I love that. Ted asks AJ, has she made any seminal decisions in this case? Have we seen any filings that are directly from her decision and her thought process of how things should play out? AJ says, the better question is, have we seen any filings that she didn't have a seminal investment in? A decision about, a suggestion about, every single thing that you've ever seen filed in this case has gone through Karen, at least some of them are hyper legal, right? But she's educated herself on, she'd make a better lawyer than most lawyers these days. But she will have an impact, and she's got a seat at the table in terms of strategy and tactics that we use every single day. Wow. Ted says, there are so many people who have never met you, but are so invested in your life and the outcome of this case. I know there are some who adamantly support you, but do you ever worry about your safety with the people who do not want to see you succeed in this case? Karen says, I did more early on. I feel more insulated now. I feel safer that people know, because if anything ever happened to me or someone that I love, I think a lot of people would know where to look. So that makes me feel safer. Ooh. Have you received any credible threats? Yep, I have. There's been some online that just the fact that someone's brazen enough to even post something like that gives you some insight into their stability or lack thereof. I literally need to clip that to respond to some of the messages that I get on Twitter. Ted says, people showing up at your house, calling your private cell phone. Karen says, no, that has not, I've really not had my physical boundaries impinged in any way, nor have my parents. I think by and large, very large, there are very friendly people all around us. And then Ted asks AJ, your defense strategy is the most aggressive I've ever seen in a case. You've taken on the DA. You've taken on the judge. How much of that is Karen Reed? How much is that the team? AJ says, probably equal parts. The defense strategy comes down to probably 3 or 4 words. Get the truth out. That's the defense strategy. It may be more aggressive than you're used to. The conduct in this case is more dire than I'm used to. I've seen a lot of cases. I've been doing this for 30 years. I don't think I've ever seen a case with as many questions, as many suspect actions, as many suspect conduct as I've seen in this case. There is unequivocally corruption in this case. Ooh, can I highlight? How come sometimes I can highlight and sometimes I can't? This really drives me crazy. No. Let's read that part again. There is unequivocally corruption in this case. The antis are going to be like, yeah, he's the corruption. There are absolutely cover-ups in this case. There's conduct by law enforcement and the DA's office, aka Michael Morrissey, aka Greg Connor, vote for Adam Deitch. He didn't say that, I did, but he also said that with his donations, the likes of which I've never seen. And my job, our job as a team, is to get that truth out. I'm not going to sit idly by. Our team is never going to sit idly by and let an innocent woman be convicted based on false evidence, false pretenses, cover-ups, agreements, and decisions on the other side to hamstring the defense, hamstring our ability to get the truth out. I'm not going to sit idly by to do that. So is it aggressive? Sure, it's aggressive. But a woman's life is in the balance. So yeah, we're going to stay aggressive. We've been aggressive. We're going to stay aggressive until the truth comes out. I'm just going to pause for 1 second and say this is what I mean by when I'm reading weird things happen in my brain, because I was just waiting for him to say that little soccer cheer we used to do that was like, be aggressive, B-E aggressive, B-E-A-G-G-R-E-S-S-I-V. Okay, back to this. Ted says, I think it was 4 words at the end of the last trial, and it was, can we get better at counting? And it was, I'm going to declare a mistrial. 4 words. Okay. What was that like for you to take in? It was the outcome that I had thought about the least. I thought about the best case scenario, and I always think about the worst because that's how I'm able to process. I have to think it through. How will I deal with this? Who will fight for me if I'm not sitting here to fight for myself? And of course, I thought about an acquittal because I know I deserve it. I had not really thought about a mistrial. It was only a couple days. It was like day 2, the end of day 2 into the deliberations that both David and Alan told me separately when we were in the church next door that this could be a mistrial. And the prospect of that at the time during jury deliberations was a gut punch. But then when it was declared, it was such a relief that I was free. I was free to sleep in my own bed, hug my parents, continue to work on this case. My immediate next worry was, I hope I have my team available to go to battle all over again. But those moments waiting to hear 12 strangers determine what was going to physically happen to you for the foreseeable future or forever, when you're able to walk out a free woman or man, it was an incredible relief. You just see your life as could be taken away from you. That just made my stomach hurt. I'm just going to stop for 1 sec. That literally just made my stomach hurt, like thinking about them in the church and like waiting for anything is like torture. I'm terrible at waiting for anything. I can't, like, if I have a surprise for somebody, I like give it to them immediately the first second that I see them. I like the thought that you usually when you're waiting for something, you like know what that something is and it still feels like torture. To be waiting and not know, like, am I going to jail? Am I going home? Am I going to be free? Or am I going to like live in this limbo some more? Must have just been like the most, oh my God, I don't even know what the word is, like terrifying. I just want to quickly read these because my goal is to keep up with them because I feel terrible that a couple days ago I missed all of them. And that's so rude of me. Mama Loca 5 sent $10 and said, also studied abroad in Spain on bus trip to Sleep Town. We found a bar serving shots for 25 cents. Chupitos. Last people back to the bigger group waiting on bus. The looks we got. Happy to be here with you. I love that. 25 cents. Yeah, that'll do you in. Meatball Morrissey Sketty Stains in $4.99 and said, that's exactly what we do. We go to dinner, talk, Karen, read, have weekends together, make friends. It's great. Yeah. Karen's like, well, I have friends, but all we do is talk about this case. Same. Oksana, hi, sent $19.99 and said, here's to Friday nights full of FOIA and find out and not drink too much and find out. You know what? You could also find out if you drink too much, but it will probably be less exciting what you do find out. So everybody mix in a water. Back to this. Ted asks, as we head to the second trial, one of the possible outcomes here could be a conviction. That could be prison time. How much have you thought about that? Oh my God. Karen said, I think about it every day about prison time, and it doesn't frighten me the way it did 3 years ago. I was arrested 3 years ago tomorrow. This said February 9th. That date is just wrong. Yep. That's not February 9th. She was arrested on February 2nd. Right? First and arraigned on the 2nd. Okay. I was arrested 3 years ago tomorrow, and I've been in jail twice as a result of this prosecution. I've now accepted the fact what's happening to me and the awareness this case has raised and the eyes it's opened. That is what my purpose is in Massachusetts and whatever effect this has on other parts of the country. Wow. Yeah. And even if a jury got it wrong, or there's even more nefarious behavior on behalf of this prosecution, then just even more awareness will be raised. So I can accept whatever happens. Nothing will ever get the best of me or break me down. I like that we know the outcome reading this because that would be really hard. Yeah, arraigned February 2nd. So arrested February 1st. So this couldn't have been February 9th. Anyways. Then Ted asks AJ, there have been sort of these unsubstantiated claims in the atmosphere that there might have been some funny business with the jurors who were dismissed. AJ says, right. Ted said, is this a real concern that you have? Is this something that you are looking at, or have you dismissed it as a rumor? AJ said, I never just dismissed that as a rumor. Something like that it's too convenient for the prosecution for us to just dismiss out of hand. Do I have any specific evidence that there was jury tampering? I don't have any specific evidence of it. Do I think that there are questions that should be asked? Do I think that there are questions that have been raised about the way the jurors were dismissed and who was dismissed? Very specifically, there were jurors who were very, very clearly throughout, It's impossible to sit 8 feet away from 12 or 15 folks and not get an idea, just a chemistry idea of where those jurors are one way or the other, based on certain, body language and facial expressions, etc. Sighs and huffs and arm folds and leaning forward, leaning back, things of that nature, based on certain witnesses. It's interesting that 3 of probably the most stalwart jurors who we believed, and I will go to my grave believing, were very supportive of the defense, ended up cast aside within minutes, not days or hours, within minutes of the jurors deliberating. Within minutes of me standing up and giving my final summation, those 3 jurors were gone. So is that a query? Absolutely. Have I dismissed it? I'll never dismiss it. Is there anything to do about it? Not so sure. And then Ted asks AJ, one of the state troopers who was involved with the Norfolk County DA's office on the periphery of the investigation was also responsible for the jury? AJ says, right. He wasn't that far on the periphery of the investigation. So we're talking about Fanning, correct? He was involved in the investigation. He was direct supervisor over the individuals that were testifying and about whom we had leveled some very, very serious claims and ended up proving those claims during the course of direct and cross-examination in the presentation of our case. That person, that supervisor, we found out well into the trial. As a matter of fact, at the end of the trial, we found out is the person who was governing the jurors. Is this the first time we have confirmation of that? I feel like that's been speculated, talked about. Is that okay? That's a question that should be raised. That is an issue that should be teased out, should never, ever happen. That is the very definition of a conflict of interest. And Ted says, is that standard in Massachusetts for just the DA's office to assign whoever they want to be the sort of, supervisor of the jury? AJ says, yeah. Is it standard in Massachusetts? I hope not. I've never seen that in my life. But if I had a nickel for every time I've never seen this in my life as it pertains to the Massachusetts criminal justice system, I'd have a lot of nickels. I've never seen that happen. It should never have happened. It's abhorrent to the system of justice in which we work. Those kinds of conflicts of interest they just can't stand. But they did, and we weren't even told about it. I mean, that was one of the most galling parts of that revelation is that, wait. This has been happening under our nose the entire trial, and I'm just now finding out about it. We would have made hay about it as soon as we found out. And we did, but it was 10 minutes before I was about to stand up to close the case. Oh my God. Imagine you've been prepping for this, you're all ready, and suddenly it's oh yeah, by the way, that's John Fanning. He's in charge of the jurors. Oh my gosh. Some of the things that Michael Proctor, this is Ted Daniels asking, some of the things that Michael Proctor said about you were objectively vicious. So he's asking this to Karen. What was it like to be there in court and listen to all those texts? Karen said, another relief. So many moments in court were a relief to me because I've known these things in some cases for years and had to keep it amongst our inner circle. Nothing Michael Proctor texted and admitted out loud in court about me would ever offend me. I'm proud of my overcoming of health crises. Proctor was just letting the public know what I've known about Michael Proctor, who he really is. And it's just luck that, as I know it, Michael Proctor doesn't have a daughter. But those text messages, as vile as they are, I think are the least of his offenses. I love that. Like, I mean, I'm just going to pause there for 1 second. You know how easy it would have been for her to be like, I hate him. I hate that man. I truly hate that man. And then just bash him. But she's like so far above him in every sense of the word that it's like talking bad about him and saying like being offended by what he said would be just stooping to his level. And for her to just be like, I'm glad that everybody knows how disgusting he is. I had to keep that a secret for so long. That's super strong. I really like that. That just gave me vibes of, I was just watching Olivia Gonsalves's rewatching her victim impact statement to Brian Koberger, and she stood up there and she was like sit up straight when I talk to you, and just like she didn't cry, she didn't like try to make him feel bad for her. She tried to make him feel bad about himself, and it was like such a gut punch in a way that I feel like these disgusting, like narcissistic men, it's like the only way to kind of get to them. That feels the same way, where it's like, oh, he's disgusting. Now everybody knows he's disgusting. Also, still at this point, he was like fighting for his job back. Oh, Michael Proctor, how the mighty have fallen. Okay, back to this. Ted to Mr. Jackson says, Alan, you could have had Michael Proctor read one or two of the text. You spent, wait, hold on. Alan, you could have had Michael Proctor read one or two of the texts. You spent hours having him read those out loud. I'm sure that was done by design. Okay, Ted. AJ says, it was. Everything that we did in that cross-examination of Michael Proctor was done by design. I wanted to make sure that I had an audience of 12 folks, an undefined 12 folks sitting in that jury box who were going to make a judgment about, not just about Karen Reed. They're going to make a judgment about the prosecution and about the investigating officer in charge of the prosecution or in charge of the investigation. They needed to see and hear a full panoply of who this person really is and get down to the fabric of the human being. That's the only way they could assess the veracity of the entire investigation. As goes the investigating officer, goes the investigation. And the prosecution, the Commonwealth, wanted to hide that. They wanted to mask it. They didn't want to give those data over to us. They didn't want to give those texts to us. They tried mightily in front of the court to get those suppressed. Why? Because as goes the process, as goes the investigator, goes the prosecution. The texts were vile. They were disgusting. They were not just as Michael Proctor tried to slough through them. Slough? It sounds like a British word. Slog through them? That's how you spell slog? I don't know. One of the things that Carter says now is, I don't know. It's from Bluey. It's so cute. So he just goes around all day saying, I don't know. I don't know. As Michael Proctor tried to slough them off, regrettable, Mr. Proctor. Seriously? That's the best you can come up with in terms of what your sloth? How does that spell sloth? I thought Mitchell was joking. Thanks, Mitchell. I'm sorry I doubted you. Sorry, I only trust Corey. How does SLOUGH, oh, I guess like OUGH, like in enough? Sloth? Sloth, cough. Okay. It's in a word family. No, Corey, not like another word I don't know. Trough? Like the cattle? I'm gonna go with Quinn's like cough. Thanks though. Slough them off. Slough them off. That's really what AJ said. Proctor tried to slough them off. Regrettable, Mr. Proctor? Seriously? That's the best you can come up with in terms of what the things you're saying and the bias that you're showing about a criminal defendant, an accused who has yet to be convicted of anything. That's the best you can say is it's regrettable. It's far beyond regrettable. It's disgusting. It's disturbing. That man should not ever carry a badge. That man should not ever carry a gun. He should never have any authority over the community members ever again. Guess what, AJ? He's not going to. Ted says, "Are you surprised that he's been fighting for his job?" AJ says, yeah. What I think he should probably do is put his tail between his legs and get out of the jurisdiction and go find some other line of work, someplace where he can't hurt people. This is what I've been saying is if Michael Proctor wanted to be the white supremacist, disgusting human that he is, he could work anywhere. And it's not a good look. It's like you're a bad human, but like go be I can't even think of a job that I would like want to put him in because I like no. Like no, I don't really want to go be unemployed. Go start a YouTube channel. We'll follow you. You can say whatever you want and you'll probably find an audience for it. And we'll be hate listening too. But the fact that at that point he was still like, remember in his hearings, he was like whining, like everybody else did bad things too. Why am I the only one who got in trouble? Like, I don't know. Tell us about all the other people who did bad things, and then maybe we can reassess that. People Morrissey Sketty Stains spent $9.99 to say feeding trough like Julie Nagel feeds from her trough 6 to 7 times a day. That is, I'm just reading it. It's not my opinion. Also, like, why am I so red right now just from reading this? I know, because our air conditioning is off. Hold on, please. Okay, air conditioning on. Maybe at some point my cheeks won't be so red anymore. Okay, back to this. Ted said, "How will Michael Proctor play in the retrial?" Spoiler alert. If you're asking the jury foreman, not great. AJ said, "Oh, he's going to play large in the retrial. They can't look. The prosecution, I think, probably wants very badly to take some magic eraser, some pixie dust, and erase Michael Proctor from the minds of the public, and certainly not from the minds of the new jury who's going to come in and assess this case. They're not going to be able to do it, not as long as we're breathing. Michael Proctor is going to be a part of this case, whether he likes it or not." Kind of. He was. It was just different. Like he wasn't there. His Jonathan with the good hair was. It wasn't the same. Ted said, "Because they don't necessarily have to call him, but obviously you have a right to call him as a witness." AJ said, "Correct, and we will. If they don't call him, we will." You didn't. "We're not going to allow the Commonwealth to hide the truth from the last jury or this upcoming jury." And then Karen said, "He touched everything. Everything." AJ said, "There's no part of the case that he hasn't affected. No part of the case that he hasn't affected. He was in charge of the entire investigation. The personality and the character of the investigation is the personality and the character of Michael Proctor. They are one and the same, and we'll make sure that that's disclosed to the jury. Ted said, the feds devoted a lot of time and resources investigating what happened here. We are now 2 years removed from that, and there's been no action taken. Why is that? Thank you. AJ says, well, I don't know that there's been no action taken. We don't know about any action taken. Yes, you do. You got we need to change the narrative on this because even AJ's answer is incorrect. The feds handed over 3,074 pages of exculpatory evidence. That is action. They didn't have to do that. They could have investigated and kept that to themselves. They could have investigated and determined from ARCA that it was possible that John's injuries came from being hit by a car and that Karen's damage to her car came from hitting John, in which case they probably would have just closed the investigation, not said anything, not handed over anything, because they'd be like, great, they're on the right track. Thank goodness, no corruption. But that's not what happened. The feds did an investigation, hired ARCA, found out, got 2:22 a.m. text messages from a phone that had been disposed of in a military base and a phone that had been upgraded, and happy birthday, Brian Albert. And they got those text messages. Like, there was a lot of action. Everybody, I need you all to work with me on changing the narrative on this when they're like, well, the feds didn't do anything. The feds did a ton. You know who didn't do anything? Michael Morrissey didn't do anything, aka Greg Conner, aka Adam Lally and Hank Brennan. They didn't do anything. They got 3,074 pages of exculpatory evidence and said, no biggie. It's like much easier if we just like stay the course. So feds, if you could just like back off now, that would be great. Imagine the feds like hand you 3,000 pages that tell you that you're lying and you're like basically breaking your oath of your job and like potentially the law. And you're like, yeah, but like Brian Albert. And then you just stay the course. Crazy. I just feel like they're like all of the civil cases now feel like they're just taunting the feds that know what really happened. I mean, Adam Deitch sits in these interviews. This is a long tangent. Adam Deitch sits in these interviews and literally is telling us, like, I know exactly what happened. I know that Karen's innocent, and I'm running for district attorney because I know how corrupt it is in that office, because I know what they're covering up. It's not like us speculating. It's not us like reading body language and like putting together like data points from like Cruiser GPS and the day that Taylor, no, he like knows for sure. He has definitive evidence. He's not going to just go out on like a hunch. And still they're like, hey, Karen, like we're suing you and we want to move it to federal court. Like, that is taunting. That is crazy. Anyways, back to this. Hi, Missy. Yeah, Missy said exactly. They could have stayed silent and not turned over the papers. To write it, you know how long it takes to write 3,074 pages? We've read right now, we're on page 18. Oh my God, we're never going to get through this. That was 18 pages. You know how much 3,000 pages are? 3,000 pages. How much is a ream of paper? Like 500? That's like a whole box, like a whole Staples box of reams of paper. That's how many pages that is. Do you think that counts? It's back, front? Just front. That is so much. And when they talked about it in open court, AJ said, and all of it is exculpatory. Then Laura McLaughlin stood up and she was like, it actually is like exactly in line with like how we were going to try the case. Really? Your case included balloon knots, La McLaughlin? Maybe it's my light. oh, that's better. Okay. Okay. My eyes are like adjusting. Hold on. Okay. Back to this. AJ said a little bit of a wrong answer. We don't know about any action taken. You got handed all those pages. There's lots of, it's like, and then Ted interrupts and says, no indictments. And AJ says, no indictments, but it's like looking at a duck on water, Ted. The duck is very still. It's very stable. But underneath, the little flippers are going crazy. Like we call them little flippers. The little flippers are going crazy. That would be a cute YouTube name, Little Flipper. I don't know what's happening just beneath the surface. I don't know what's happening. I'm not privy to what the federal investigation is, actually where it's going, or how far it's led to this point. I do know that they were seminal in providing us, thank you, with information. And when I say us, it's important to note providing both sides. They didn't pick a side or choose a side in this. Hello, House defendants, do you hear that? When you're like, they provided everything that they decided was disclosable. They provided to both sides. The Commonwealth decided they didn't want to use it. As a matter of fact, they tried mightily to keep us from using it. Thank goodness cooler heads prevailed, and we were able to utilize much of what their investigation or what their disclosure consisted of. AJ, I hate to break it to you in February of 2025, but they're going to try mightily again. So cooler heads only prevailed for the time being because in comes Hank Brennan to ask Dr. Wolf about his wife's Facebook use and if she's joined the FKR Facebook group. But if it hadn't been for them, the Commonwealth had been hiding evidence from us for years. And it wasn't until the federal investigation and revelation came to pass that we actually sort of were able to look behind the curtain, which is where we should have been looking in the first place. So it was central to our presentation of our case, of our defense. And then Ted says Leah Foley will be the third U.S. attorney, as far as we know, who will at least touch this case. Leah Foley just did an interview the other day about ICE, right? Is that Leah Foley? AJ says, right. Ted said, do you expect that having a new head of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston will change anything? AJ said, I don't know. I've been incredibly impressed with the U.S. Attorney's Office in terms of the leadership under Ms. Foley's predecessors. Joshua Levy was central to making certain decisions about what to disclose to us, where the investigation was going. I already know some people that are going to have a field day with that sentence. Again, I don't know what the full parameters of the investigation are, but I can say that I was very, very happy with what they did and what they disclosed, trying to get the truth out previously. And I hope Ms. Foley does the same thing. I'm looking forward to her continuing the investigation. I hope she does. Ted says, when you look at the scope of the federal investigation and all the things that were done, you receive, 3,000 pages from that investigation. Are there other things that might have been done or have been done that you think that should also be turned over or could be turned over? AJ said, I don't know. Again, Ted. Why is that funny? Again, Ted. We're sort of operating a little bit in the blind because I don't know what the full contours of the federal investigation consist of. So it's not like I can say, oh, well, they did this, but I don't have that information. I don't know what the this is. And the only thing I have is the information that they provided to both sides. And then we culled through it. What is culling through it? AJ, where do you come up with these words? I feel like he's speaking in like the 1600s. We culled through it. It sounds like you have like a bubble in your throat. We culled through it to decide, okay, is this relevant to our case? And nearly every page of it was highly, highly relevant material. And then Ted says to AJ, one of the things that the federal government did was hire this outside accident reconstruction team who would have no vested interest in the outcome of this case. How important was those two accident reconstructionists coming and saying, no way, no how? Hey, Sam. AJ said, I cannot describe the gravity of those two witnesses. First of all, they were unassailable in terms of their credibility and their credentials. There was nobody who testified that was more credentialed to talk about the issues that were attendant to them than those two gentlemen, those two doctors, PhDs. The fact that we didn't hire them, they can't be considered hired guns by the prosecution. The fact that the Commonwealth didn't even know their name, they were completely independent third parties who did not know Karen Reed or this case. And they did not know that their assessment was attendant to Karen Reed or this case. Central to their testimony, completely credible. I can't describe the gravity of those two witnesses and the impact that it had on the trial in getting to the truth. But what they said echoed everything that we had been learning during the course of our investigation on the defense side, which is that that car was not damaged by hitting a human body. It did not hit a person. And John O'Keefe was not injured by being hit by a vehicle. No way, no how, it didn't happen. As one of the witnesses testified, the physics don't lie. The science doesn't lie. Data don't lie, people do. The car did not make contact with John O'Keefe. She didn't do this. Yup. Ted says, Karen, when the ARCA information came in, that document splash dump, I guess. What was your emotion? Do you think he said I guess because he got awkward saying dump? In that document dump, I guess. What was your emotion kind of reading what they decided? Karen said, I didn't really know the details of it until trial because I did not have the same access to those materials that the attorneys did because of the federal protective order. That must have been hard. Like, hold on, I'm going to pause there for 1 second. Thinking about what AJ was saying at the beginning about how involved Karen is in her own defense, that must have been so hard for them that, like, because of the federal protective order, there were things that AJ and David and Liza knew that she was not allowed to be let in on yet. And so she'd be like, probably like yip yapping about something. And they're like, yeah, okay. Like, we'll let you know about 222 as soon as we can. Karen said, it was another moment, and there's been so many that I realized, to put it mildly, how underhanded this prosecution is. That a district attorney can be privy to that accident reconstruction report and continue to pursue this case and not call Doctors Wolf and Rentschler. Yeah, exactly. To be fair, I don't know that even if Michael Morrissey read the ARCA reports that he would understand them. It just doesn't seem like he would make it all the way through. But the whole team, Michael Morrissey, aka Greg Connor, aka Adam Deitch for district attorney. AJ says they have one job to do. They have one job to do to seek the truth. They had this information in front of them, as Karen just said. Why wouldn't they call them? They should have called them. Their only job is to seek the truth, not to seek a conviction. And the truth is, the physics don't lie. The car didn't hit John. He wasn't killed by being hit by a car. And they, not only did they not seek the truth, they tried to suppress it. And then Karen says, and their version of events was it was laughable. It was laughable. It was illogical. It just did. The body just landed. The phone just landed. A side swipe with no bruises. It's not as if they had qualified, credentialed, advanced, educated experts to counter, to offer another version of events. They didn't have that. And they chose to ignore that. And they chose to present to the court, to the public in a hearing, that those federal materials, 3,000 pages, were 90, this is what I was saying about Laura McLaughlin, were 90 to 95% consistent with their theory of the case. The theory of the case is a car accident. The federal materials, the federal material, I just totally lost my place when I scrolled up. Wait, just another version of it. They chose to ignore that, to present to the court and to the public in a hearing that those federal materials, 3,000 pages, were 90 to 95% consistent with their theory of the case. The theory of the case is a car accident. The federal materials included a report that said there wasn't a car accident. That's the case. Yes, that's the case. That's 95% of the case. And it was inconsistent. It wasn't just inconsistent, it was diametrically opposed to the Commonwealth's theory of the case or lie of the case. I love that entire paragraph. Ted says, on the morning of January 29th, 2022, you said it was possible you might have hit John. How could that even be in the realm if you saw him going into the house? Karen says, I remember this from the televised version of this, because it never crossed my mind that the people we were with, middle-aged adults with children, some of the children were with us that night at the bar. It did not cross my mind for several days that they did this to John, that John was treated like a piece of garbage. These were women and men, some I knew better than others, that I knew to be normal people. And I went through every possibility. He was near the road and he was dying, and I didn't think he was purposely put in that place. Fervent said, you can't use physics for a side swipe. That's what Joe Paul taught me. Yeah, I just did. In your opinion, there have been a few names that have surfaced in this third-party culpability theory. Who do you think, if John was beaten up and attacked in that house, who did it? Ted, sir, are we just trying to bait an answer for the civil trial? Who did it? Defame them. AJ says, we don't know. And then Karen says, we don't know, but probably less convincingly. AJ says, we don't know, and it's not for us to know. Somebody other than Karen. Somebody other than Karen is responsible for that, for the killing of John. But who it was specifically, others know, and they're not talking. Boom. What is the most important piece of evidence that exists in this case that people could look at and say, hey, there's no way that she could have done this? Is there one thing? Okay, you guys, I asked that in squirrel school the other night recently, and everybody had a different answer, and every one of the answers was a good answer. So let's see what his answer is. To me, there is that the only physical evidence connecting, this is Karen's answer. To me, there is that the only physical evidence connecting me to where John's body was found, which I will not call the crime scene, the only physical evidence, pieces of plastic taillight, were not found until after the state police had possession of that very taillight. Boom. AJ said, and when you couple that, you're looking for one thing. When you couple that with the testimony of the experts, the third party absolutely qualified experts that there was no car accident. The car did not hit John, and John was not hit by a car. Ted said, so the taillight pieces, when they were found and when your car was taken, to you, that is the most crucial element of your defense. And Karen said, it's closely followed by other evidence, but to me, yes. Ted asks to AJ, you've had a private investigator from the start. Is that private investigator still running down tips? And will we see any new revelations at the retrial? AJ says, absolutely. Yeah, we have not slowed down our investigation one iota. AJ, we haven't either. It's Friday night and we're just FOIAing and finding out. So we get it. He said, so I'm not at liberty to say exactly what might be revealed that's new and different in the second trial, but I expect that there will be some new information that comes from our investigation as well. Ted said, people send you tips? AJ says, all the time. Yeah, the harder part is not getting the tips. The harder part is separating the wheat from the, I don't know this word either, chaff? Why is he speaking in old-timey language? The wheat from the chaff. The wheat from the chaff. Is that a thing? Is that a part of the wheat? Like the stem? The wheat from the chaff. Okay. Karen says, mm-hmm. And then AJ says, what tips are valuable enough to sort of chase down and which just seemed like, we'd be chasing our tail. But no, we get tips every single day. The public is very, very interested in getting to the truth of what actually happened to John O'Keefe. Mm-hmm. Yep. Ted says, Karen, it's been reported that your defense is running about $5 million. Is that correct? And how do you pay for that? Karen said, give or take a few million. That's a back of the envelope calculation. And it's certainly no pressure put on me in any way by my attorneys. The longer this goes, the harder they work, the more time goes into it. And Ted said, how do you pay for that? Nosy Ted. Karen says, right now I'm paying for everything entirely on the charity of supporters. People I know, former colleagues, people, many, many thousands of people I don't know. I've liquidated my retirement. I've sold my home, and everything else is from supporters. And it's not a small number. It's approaching $750,000. And I hope the supporters and the donors know this. This is their defense. They're marshaling this. I could early, but it's been 3 years. I've not had income. I had 2 incomes. Now I have none. So I'm just incredibly grateful and appreciative. And it was funny when we launched the defense fund, which Alan helped me do logistically through his firm. I was thanking donors the early days, anything sizable or even small ones, because it's not the nominal amount. It's what people can afford or their intention, and especially from strangers. And I was thanking people, and now I can't. But I just want them to know I see them all. Oh. My family members, my close friends see them, and other supporters see. Our defense fund has kind of become its own social media that people look to see what other parts of this country are people closely following and donating to this defense. So it's keeping us going financially, of course, but also emotionally. That's really nice. Did that air? I feel like she got a lot of criticism for not being super grateful. That sounds very grateful. It's important to note, not to interrupt Ted, but it's important to know that although the attorney time involved is in the multi-million-dollar range, probably $6 million between Mr. Yannetti, myself, Miss Little, other lawyers who have worked on the case, other individuals, investigators, etc., most of us, all of the lawyers are not getting paid that. We have not taken that money. We're not going to take that money. That's the value that has amassed of the legal services that's been required to mount this defense. But we're not taking the money because she doesn't have the money. And the reason that David Yannetti is doing this, the reason that I'm doing this, the reason that Liza Little is doing this, the reason that, and then Karen says Marty Weinberg. And then AJ says Marty Weinberg and Bob Alessi and others are doing this is because it's the right thing to do. None of us are willing to stand by and watch her get railroaded or steamrolled by the power of the government when she did not do this. So we have all decided as a team, we will be here for as long as it takes, and we will fight as hard as it takes to make sure that the truth comes out. I love that. Ted said, you said you received $750,000 roughly in donations. Who would we be most surprised to hear who's donated to you? And Karen says, I wouldn't disclose that to you. Go, yeah. But some well-known, maybe one of the most well-known names at my former employer. But as I said, that means just as much to me as someone from Alabama who's given me $25 from her last paycheck. Ted said, does that person's name start with an A? Karen says, no, it's a he, and just a little more directly involved. AJ said, that's just good reporting. He's just going to keep asking until he figures it out. And then Karen apparently knew who Ted was getting at and said, Abby certainly has the money. Oh, no, sorry, that's Ted's question. Abby certainly has the money. Who's Abby? Who are these people? Karen says, I wish Ted, what? Abby certainly has the money. Am I just tired? Who's Abby? I wish, Ted, I wish. And that's not for lack of trying on my part. Ted said, the largest group of people who've donated to you are your former coworkers. And Karen says, thank you, Romy. Abby Johnson from Fidelity. She's like a bigwig there. Also, like Ted, Abby certainly has the money. Relax, Ted. Okay. Karen says, not in volume of donors, not in volume of donors, but in proportion of the actual amount donated, yeah. About half has come from former colleagues to whom I'm incredibly grateful. And it's kind of taken the sting out of no longer being a part of that world and seeing them every day and doing what I love to do. That I'm still connected, and it's a different life that I have now and a different purpose, and they're contributing to it. AJ said, and it's interesting, the perception that she's got this multi-million-dollar defense, this juggernaut defense, it's just not correct. It's not accurate. Yes, she has a very valuable defense working on her behalf, but the money that the donors and the public are providing, the money that's being given to the defense fund is paying for the investigators, the expert witnesses, travel for the experts, hotel for the people flying in from all over the country, and we have to account for that. Guess what? Spoiler alert to you guys in February of 2025. You're going to have to fly them in for a whole bunch of unnecessary voir dires just for funsies. Because Hank. A massive amount of logistics. Getting people here so that they can testify. Getting people here so that they can do research. If we need to use research attorneys or other staff, that's what that's paying for. It's not paying for legal fees. None of us are taking legal fees. For the retrial, this is Ted talking, for the retrial, you're facing a new special prosecutor. Who would you rather face? Is it Adam Lally, who we saw in the first trial, or is it Hank Brennan? Karen said, I don't care who I face. I have the truth. I have the best attorneys that money is not paying for. Do your worst. Oh, I like that. Ted said, what was your take on how the DA's office performed in the first trial? Karen says, how they performed? It felt like they just wore the jury down. It felt like a lot of repetition. I don't think the jurors saw the lack of injuries to John's body or his right arm for, I want to say it was week 5, but maybe it just felt like week 5 and it was week 3. They were clearly, and I understand why, belaboring insignificant points and barely touching on the biggest parts of the evidence. AJ says, questions that they couldn't answer. They just decided the prosecution had a design. They were just going to try the case by volume instead of validity. Ted says, put it all out there. AJ said, put everything out there. And the inconvenient facts that show that John O'Keefe was not killed by Karen Reed would just get buried somewhere in the middle. Our job was to tease that out, which we did. Doesn't matter if they try to do it again. We'll do the same thing. Our job is to make sure that the truth gets out there. Ted says, I think I asked your parents the same question. If you're framed, someone's got to run that, direct that. Who is that person? Karen says, I think you know who that person is. I think there's people who are enabling and there's people who are actually moving the pieces. And hold on. Ted says, but is it your theory that it's people inside that house, 34 Fairview, who sort of called the shots from the beginning, or someone high up in law enforcement? Karen says, I don't know the interconnections, the interpersonal relationships among these people. I have a strong personal opinion that what has motivated the persecution of me is power. There were familiarities among players that never should have happened. There's a sleeve of homicide in the Norfolk DA's office, and there is in the other counties as there is in the other counties of Massachusetts. And yet, the person assigned to investigate this case, ostensibly investigate this case, lives a mile down the street from the crime scene. But I believe the players with the most influence are motivated by power and playing God. They're trying to play God with my life. And Ted said, not to protect people. Karen says, people are being protected. I don't know if the motivation was actually to protect those people, but it's a byproduct of it. I mean, there are names, and we know those names that were hidden from me. I only knew who was in that house from the rumor mill, from people I knew in Canton. It ended up becoming true. Once we pushed and filed motions and flew the team in, and 2 years later, a year and a half later, we're getting police reports of names of people that were in that house that I did not know about, or they were trying to make sure I didn't know about in early 2022. AJ says, and you can't have one without the other. You can't have a motivation to put the case on Karen Reed without also being motivated to protect yourself or to protect others that are with you. It would take a real investigation, a true investigation by their own folks to reveal who is a part of this. Is there one person that's behind it? I don't think so. My personal opinion, I think it's a combination of folks, but I don't think that we're ever going to see that true investigation because the people that are in power don't want the truth. You guys, that is why it's so important on September 1st to elect Adam Deitch to district attorney because Greg Connor is Michael Morrissey, and Michael Morrissey is the person in power who doesn't want the truth. Do you guys want the truth? I do. Ted says, but isn't that what the feds did? AJ said, that's ostensibly what the feds did and are continuing to do. Oh. And are continuing to do in February of 2025, almost like the investigation was never closed. Interesting. I don't know the full contour of what the federal investigation is revealing. Present tense in February of 2025. But I can certainly say that, to Karen's point, there were people that were never disclosed to us in any reports being in that home that weren't revealed until the federal investigators got involved. And some folks started getting cornered, and they realized, oh, hang on, I can't suppress this anymore. There are reasons why I have to now reveal this truth. And then ultimately it was revealed. Why is that? Why were folks being hidden from us in police reports, etc., as being in the house, being pertinent to this investigation? They didn't do anything. Who the hell cares? Exactly. Ted says, do we know who all those people are now? And Ted is referring to the royal we as in him. And then AJ says, now we do, which I don't think they're both talking about the same we's. Ted says, part of the first, and then AJ says, we think we do. Oh, no, sorry, this is Karen. Karen says, we think we do, yeah. And then AJ says, at least we think we do. And then Karen says, and by the way, Ted, I think it's probably half of the people that were in 34 Fairview, half of what we think the total number is, were interviewed for the first time with their defense attorneys, with their criminal defense attorneys. What a luxury. What a luxury. Some were interviewed in the first week of this case, the week following John's murder, in their attorneys' homes. Others were interviewed the fall of 2023 in their defense attorneys' offices. Convenient. And what a luxury. AJ says, and I've never seen that before either. You were talking earlier about things that are anomalous, an anomaly about this case. I've never seen that before, where like the entire panoply of eyewitnesses, supposedly eyewitnesses for the government, they'll lawyer up immediately. They're all interviewed with lawyers sitting there. Why? If you're just telling the truth, what do you need to lawyer up for? That's funny because I feel like every attorney is always like never talk to the police without an attorney present. And then he's like, why do you need a lawyer? Why are you so guilty, Higgy? Ted says to AJ, do you think it's just because of the exposure of this case, though? Ted, that's a silly question. He was just talking about the first week of the investigation. AJ says, I don't think so. I think it's self-preservation. Ted says to AJ, will you bring any new witnesses to the retrial? Will we see anyone new at the retrial from your side? AJ says, I think a lot of that depends on what we get from the Commonwealth. We're still waiting to get the full bucket of information that the Commonwealth is amassing for the second trial. But as soon as they let us know what their witness list looks like, then that will dictate in no small part what our witness list is going to look like. And then Karen says, they're in the bullpen. And then AJ says, but I fully expect, we're not waiting on that. We're pretty good at figuring out what we can telegraph, at figuring out that we can telegraph their punches. So we have not been sitting on our hands. I can put it that way. And will you see new faces? Yes, I expect you will. Yeah. Imagine not having Kelly Dever. What would that have been like? Ted says, we're 3 years removed from what happened, and you said you're still receiving important evidence from the state. Why wouldn't have that been turned over for the first trial? Karen says, because it's exculpatory. Exactly. Why didn't they turn it over for the first trial? Oh, I don't know, because it proves I'm innocent. AJ says, that's the question we've been asking. Why wasn't this turned over during the first trial? And you probably will see that question posed in a formal motion that we will have before the court, before the trial starts, because that's the right question to ask. Why the hell? You've been prosecuting this case for 3 years. We should have every scrap of information available to you in our possession before the first trial. We have now learned that did not happen. Ted said, Karen, can you give me an example of something that you haven't? And AJ says, nope, nope, nope. And then Karen just answers anyways. Karen says, well, the CPD video was just publicized. It's in the... And AJ says, yeah, this isn't the place to talk about it. We're about to have a hearing on it. So I'd rather just... Ted says, this isn't going to air, though, until after. Ted. Pushy. I like that. Karen says, but she'll probably be not decide. Oh, talking about Bev. AJ says, yeah, exactly. She might not decide it for weeks or months. So I'd rather defer that question. Wait, okay. So what is the question? What was she about to say? The CPD video was just publicized. Are we talking about more Sallyport video? What was the motion in February 2025? Ted says to AJ, you've asked the state's highest court to intervene and essentially dismiss the murder charge. How closely do you follow the decisions that come out every day from that court? AJ says, we pretty much take the pulse of that docket every day. Oh, so like AJ's Kyle Sharkey. Love that. AJ says, we're very interested. We think that we have nothing but the deepest respect for the SJC. One of the beauties of the appellate court process is that the more elevated the courts go, the less associated they are with the sort of local issues that are attendant to a particular prosecution, a particular courtroom, a particular subject matter. So they're, by design, supposed to be elevated to a point where they can just look at something antiseptically. Sounds like astringent. Look at it legally and factually and make a decision. We're looking very, very forward to the SJC reviewing, ultimately making a decision about, and then coming out with a holding concerning the acquittal of Karen on count 1 and count 3. 2025, AJ, I hate to break it to you, but you shouldn't get your hopes up. The murder charge and the leaving the scene with injury charge. And when they do come out with that holding, my hope is that it's in our favor. Like I said, AJ, don't get your hopes up. It should be in our favor. Yep. We deeply believe legally that it will be in Karen's favor. And that will change the complexion of the second trial significantly. Sorry, little baby AJ, you're going to have the exact same verdict form. Same problems and everything. Ted says, Karen, aside from the DA's office dropping the charges against you, which is not going to happen, is the SJC ruling your best hope? Karen says, if the SJC rules in our favor, that would be a big win. But day to day, Ted, we don't plan on that. Hope for the best, expect the worst. one benefit to the SJC, to the appeal, to the affidavits submitted on behalf of the jurors that reached out to Alan and David is it will hold a magnifying glass over the verdict, over the governing of the jurors, the logistics of it. So that's something we weren't expecting at the first trial, things that were going on with the jury. We had issues with the verdict slip at the 11th hour. So this has helped us sort that out in advance of the second trial. So it has served a purpose, even if it's not the best outcome with the SJC. Ted says to AJ, so the jurors that came forward said that they found you not guilty on second-degree murder, but they were stuck on manslaughter. Why is that? Why do you think that there were people in that box that said, no, we believe Karen struck John? AJ says, actually, I believe, and part of this is a little guesswork and filling in blanks, but the jurors that came forward indicated that they weren't actually even stuck on manslaughter. They were stuck on a subordinate charge beneath manslaughter, which means by definition, they were instructed you have to find not guilty on manslaughter to even go to a subordinate charge. So as it stands, as we sit here today, the information that we have is that she was acquitted on count 1, acquitted on count 3, acquitted on the upper charge of count 2, and they were stuck on something lesser, like a DUI or DUI with injury or something like that. Ted says to AJ, but that would still mean that there were people in the box who thought Karen hit John. Well, Ted, were you paying attention when we were just talking about Fanning tampering with the jury? AJ says, I think that I don't think so, Ted. I don't believe that's true. I believe that there were people. I think that we dispatched that notion in trial to the nth degree. I don't believe that there were actually jurors in the box who believed that the Commonwealth had proved beyond any and all reasonable doubt that she struck John with her car. I think what they thought was there is a tragic situation, a tragic outcome. A man lost his life, and that is tragic. It's deeply tragic for John and his family. And there was drinking going on. Drinking by Brian Albert, drinking by Brian Higgins, drinking by Chris Albert, everybody, including Karen Reed. And she's the one on trial. Given the fact that there was drinking going on and someone lost their life, I think that there were certain people on the jury who just decided, I don't want to say not guilty across the board. Let's find something lesser to see if we can do something to close that loop for John O'Keefe. And I don't think it had really intellectually anything to do with Karen Reed actually striking John O'Keefe. Okay, I need to pause for a second because I've been staring at my computer screen for so long that I'm like literally seeing like, when you like look at a light for too long and there's like a white light and it keeps getting in the way of what I'm trying to read. I think that means we need to do a fervent break and then I can get my eyesight back. I can already see better. Whoa. And then we will continue. I don't have anything even lined up, so hold on. Any requests? I'm just going to close my eyes and pick one. Just basically like having my eyes open right now because, how do people, you guys, for those of you who have, I think it's because I've never had like a desk job. People who sit and look at a computer all day, I truly do not know how you do it because, oh my gosh, literally how? I think my eyes would like pop out of my eye sockets. I just saw Boozy said Proctor, so there we go. Oh my gosh, I'm going to download this while we're playing that. I'm going to look away from my computer and then download it. Okay, we're taking a break. Also, Mitchell, I commented with my email address. You need to send me an email so I can get you the premium that you deserve. Also, I haven't been able to look at the chat at all, but like, what are your guys' thoughts so far? I really enjoy just hearing them talk and like not snippets of them talking and not like what the mainstream media decided was like good for TV. But I like just hearing their full thoughts on these things, and like I am so aligned with like their thinking on so much of this, where it's just like, yeah, the answer is like Karen didn't do it. So like none of this is scary and none of this is strategic. The strategy is like, she didn't do it, so we're going to prove that at the end. And the Commonwealth has to have all of these other like moving pieces and hiding this and like striking that. I like hearing them talk about that. Okay, we're going to take a fervent break and then we're going to continue, and maybe I'll go get some eye drops. See you guys in a minute.
The life of a proctor defender. Send some text that might offend you. Lose your gun while you're out on a bender. That's the life of a proctor defender. That's the life of a proctor defender. That's the life of a proctor defender. I don't even know why this is in the news. All of y'all are acting like prudes. Who doesn't like looking at nudes and sharing those nudes with the whole damn crew? Don't come at me with quid pro quo. I love that man, no homo. Not one text that he planted evidence. That means that it is so evident there's no corruption, so what's the relevance? The feds found nothing except for these messages. They say there was a conflict of interest, but really we all had a common interest. Frame Karen Reed and we're in the clear. Then work with Kev on a cold case of beer. The life of a proctor defender. Send some text that might offend you. Lose your gun while you're out on a bender. That's the life of a proctor defender. That's the life of a proctor defender. That's the life of a proctor defender. Please judge, don't let these texts out. He's been through enough and he's really stressed out. He's got Kerry Roberts backing him up, got Matt McKay backing him up, the district attorney backing him up, and Yuri, yeah, he gave a thumbs up. How about the Emmy? Not so much. How about the laws of physics? Not so much. How about Michael Easter? Not so much. How about common sense? Definitely not. The silent majority aren't on Twitter. For my man Chip, my hands on the trigger. Today in Canton, it's time to kill some.
No, sorry, Proctor, I can't say that.
The life of a proctor defender. Send some text that might offend you. Lose your gun while you're out on a bender. That's the life of a proctor defender. Here, Bear, take the mic. Tell him how you feel. Bitch, get out of line. I call her a whack job. Then I wonder why I got fired from my last job. All these Twitter trolls say I'm looking like a fat slob. Tell the FKR crew they're gayer than a flash mob. If I go to jail, please pick the right cellmate, cause I probably pissed off every single inmate. They say orange is the new black, and as you know, I don't really like black. I can't help that. They annoy me. The only hood I like is white and pointy. Oh!
Okay, Jesus, Bear, please step away from the mic. White and pointy.
Stop, stop, you're making it worse. It's hard to defend you sometimes. The life of a proctor defender.
Put your arm out to the side, do a little spinning. Do the pirouette, boy, the pirouette, boy, the pirouette, boy. Put your arm out to the side and pirouette, boy, pirouette, boy, pirouette, boy. Put your arm out to the side. They say it came from a tail light. I say I don't know, that look like a dog bite. They tell me, Paul, look the other way. Is this the first person that you frame? So I start by talking to the crime scene. And yes, I mean the actual crime scene. Lawyers asking where the body and debris. I say I can't say definitely. Jackson asked me questions and I'm supposed to feel. He wanna know how John O'Kee got hit. So I tell him, Paul, put your arm out to the side, do a little spin that, and do the pirouette, boy, the pirouette, boy, the pirouette, boy. Put your arm out to the side and pirouette, boy, pirouette, boy, the pirouette, boy. Put your arm out to the side and
Damn, Fervent go crazy on that beat.
what about this piece of debris? I say, I guess he must have flown 30 feet. Wanna grill me about my degree. Go talk to one in Shannon and get back to me. Mr. Jackson, here's the situation. I don't know anything about these calculations. Yeah, I know you used to work in aviation, but these physics terms got me hyperventilating. Jackson asked me questions and I'm supposed to feel. He wanna know how the evidence got where it did. I say I got the physics knowledge of a kid. My only explanation is it just did. Pirouette boy, pirouette boy, pirouette boy. Put your arm out to the side.
This is what I often said during trial, too. I must have screamed, "Fuck you, Hank!" 9,000 times during that trial. A true mantra. My husband just thanked me for getting him into this whole Karen Reed thing. He said the 2-year wind-up was worth it for this song alone. My kid asked me what I was humming, and I definitely couldn't tell him the truth about this one. This one is in my head all day long. I was just dancing through the grocery store singing this. This is in my head all the time. Standing in the kitchen, fuck you, Hank. La, 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 la. In the shower, oh, fuck you, Hank. La, 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 la. I would have paid money to see Lally's reaction the first time hearing this. The amount of times this song goes through my head daily is unhealthy. This is the greatest channel that I've seen in a long time. Volume 2 has to be F, you chip. I've seen it 10 times and still get a gut punch. Even my girl, who is so fucking over Karen Reed, thought it was great. You know this is on Lally's playlist. You know Lally sings this song all day. Emily C has awesome taste. Well, I woke up with the remix of this playing in my head. F you Hank, Lally wanna bop ba. F you Hank, Lally wanna Bolly wanna bop ba. These have overlapped in my brain and play together now. I can totally see Hank getting pissed, blind smashed to tatters, and throwing empty beer cans at Lally's window while screaming, "You may be hung, but I won today." F you, Adam. I don't miss seeing Spanky, he's a loser. I wonder how many of the views are just mine.
Okay, we're back. Hold on. I can see again. I did some eye drops. I can read again. We're good. Okay. Fervent, You are a genius in every sense of the word. And thank you for including me in your song. Okay. Here we go. Karen, would you like to see this case tried somewhere else, moved out of Norfolk County, moved out of Massachusetts? Why would she want that? Massachusetts is where we're outraged. Karen said, I'm not afraid of this case being tried in Norfolk County. I'm agnostic. In terms of picking a jury for the next trial, I mean, it was a challenge the first time around. How the heck do you do it this time? Karen said, we're not looking for jurors that haven't heard about the case. Oh, can't wait to hear the spin on that one. What you're doing to my jury pool. That's going to be impossible. We're looking for jurors that haven't formed an opinion about the case, which is possible. And they may have I know there are people in the jury pool that have maybe heard about the case tangentially or know my face or passed by it on the dial. Okay. But don't really know the evidence. I'm optimistic that those people exist and they'll hear the evidence and they'll see the truth. But I believe people in Norfolk County, I've seen it, and I'm not from Norfolk County. I didn't live there. I wasn't raised there. But they're smart and savvy and they're passionate. Yeah, we are. And when they do hear about the case, most of my supporters, I would guess, are from Norfolk County proportionately, and they're intelligent. They see this for what it is by following the evidence really closely. So I just need jurors that will do that. I haven't done it yet, but will be willing to do that. Oh, you see how she's not like, I know Paula is going to be a juror and I already tainted her? You hear that, forensic room? Ted says, you've spoken at length about this case and the circumstances that have happened. Why not take the stand? Karen says, I'm not saying that I'm not taking the stand. I felt confident in our case, in our defense, because a lot of our case was our cross-examination of these witnesses. And we made a game time decision, and I will take the advice of my attorneys. But I'm not afraid of taking the stand, and I'm clearly not afraid of speaking. But I will not assign any genuine, truthful intentions to the prosecution. And I've already seen signs there, you know? They're playing hardball, and we'll weigh the pros and cons, and we'll make another second game time decision. Do you think that this is personal for the DA's office, that they want a conviction more than probably any conviction they've ever gotten before? And Karen just says, yes. Yep. AJ says, and there are certainly people involved with prosecution who want exactly that. I would venture to say there's not a single person in the Commonwealth at the prosecution level. I don't think that there's a single person at the investigative level with law enforcement who actually believes in their heart that they can prove this case against Karen beyond any and all reasonable doubt. I don't think that there's a soul at the prosecution or involved with the prosecution that believes that. Not a soul. I believe this. This is a trial of a vendetta, of personal animus, of trying to save face. I don't think anybody there, honestly, put them down, strap them to a lie detector. Do you think you can prove this case beyond any reasonable doubt that Karen Reed did this? Nope. I don't think so. So yeah, I think there's a lot of personal interest and personal animus that has gotten in the way of the prosecution and the Commonwealth doing their duty, their sworn duty, not to prosecute someone unless they believe that they can do so to a jury, an objective jury of her peers beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't think any one of them think that. Yeah. Ted says, Karen, is it your understanding that nobody in the Norfolk DA's office would try this case, and that's why they went to Hank Brennan? Well, first of all, I like when they ask these questions and Lally gets like completely crapped on inadvertently, because Lally said, like in Paul O'Keefe's interview with Christina Rex, he said like Adam Lally is ready to try this case again. Like he was ready to go. Lally was like, put me in. And they were like, yeah, you're going to play the game again. You're just going to sit in a different spot and do a whole lot less talking. Poor Lally. Karen said, we've heard rumors to that effect, and it was from some of the same people that told us Hank Brennan was being recruited within weeks of the mistrial. So I lend some credence to those rumors, but they're just rumors. And also, no one in the DA's office is trying this case for the retrial. What? Ted says, this case has become your identity. Is that for the rest of your life, or will one day you just want to put it all behind you? Karen says, I don't think I can, even if I wanted to, and I'm okay with that. It's more important, this fight, than anything I've done by a wide margin. And it's made me realize that this happens all the time. And I'm just fortunate enough to be able to fight back. But what's happened to me has happened too easily, too swiftly, with seemingly no checks and balances other than the ones we can bring. That this can't be the first. It can't be the first time. And it's 2025 in Massachusetts. It's happening right before everyone's eyes. It's hiding in plain sight. So this is a problem that I hope I'm here to address. And even if I'm not, it will be addressed. We're doing it right now. Regardless of the outcome, which will be an acquittal, eyes have been opened. That's why Alan and I are sitting here. There's interest, and people are evaluating their law enforcement and their elected officials and their district attorneys with a more critical eye than they were before. And that's a bigger impact and a purpose that I could have, even if it's been very, very difficult for me and the people that are closest to me. Yeah. Something that the prosecution has recently been focused on were calls you made to your mother overnight. What were those calls about? Karen says, anyone who spent any time with me throughout my life knows I'm incredibly close to my parents. And I was very troubled, to put it. You've heard the voicemails. It was a blizzard. There were young children unattended, and John uncharacteristically, when I say uncharacteristically, I mean he's never done that before at that hour in those conditions. And I was panicked. I was torn between, did something go wrong, or is he purposely ignoring me and taking advantage of me to go home to the kids while he stays out drinking? And as I do, and do I wish I did it less? Yes. But now I need her more than ever. As I normally would, I'd reach out to my mother for, what do you think is happening? And I, reach out to them every day. Now that that night just, it's like I never woke up from it. Oh. So, and then AJ says, I think the fact that the prosecution seems to be focusing on those calls and trying to wrap Karen's parents into this just shows a level of desperation. That shows or suggests that the prosecution understands how thin, paper thin, chiffon thin their case is. They can't prove this case. And so they're just sort of desperately looking to scattershot other information to make innuendo about why she would call her mother. She calls her parents all the time, all the time. There's no there. Doesn't mean the prosecution isn't going to look and make suggestions about it, but it's a desperate ploy and there's nothing there. Ted says to AJ, what would surprise me or the people watching this about something that's transpired over the last 3 years? What would surprise me? AJ says, I don't think so. I think one of the things we've tried to do on the defense team from the beginning is pull that veil back, pull the curtain back, and show all the warts and blemishes of the Massachusetts State Police. I'm sorry, I'm now picturing all of them with warts. Like, oh, Yuri, how are your warts and your blemishes? The Massachusetts State Police, the Canton Police Department, the investigative techniques that they used or didn't use, the Commonwealth's prosecution of a case like this. We wanted everybody to see everything. And we were pretty successful in that in terms of the presentation in front of the first jury. We intend to do it again in front of the second jury. So the thing that's most shocking is the full universe of information that now the community has in front of it. We've gotten call after call after call, email after email, text after text from community members who don't know us, certainly don't know me. I'm from California, saying this kind of thing happened to my family. This kind of thing happened to me. This kind of thing happened to my son. This kind of thing happened to my father, my mother, and nobody would ever look at it. Nobody would believe us. Nobody would listen. Thank God you folks have found the platform to show what actually is happening in our community. That's what has been the most surprising. And it's there for everybody to see. Ted says, what is your relationship with Adam Lally and Hank Brennan? Is it cordial? Karen says, there is no relationship. And Ted says, I mean, you have to deal with them back and forth. And AJ says, not her, not me. Okay. Then to AJ, your relationship with Hank Brennan. AJ says, completely professional, cordial, civil, professional. And that's all I expect. If he's going to prosecute this case, the only thing I expect from him is professionalism, which he has given me in February 2025. I wonder if he has a different answer now. It doesn't get, at least with me and with David and with Liza, doesn't get personal. You know, we deal with what we need to deal with in the courtroom. Was it that way? Was it the same way with Adam Lally? Yes. Okay. Yeah, by and large, I disagree vehemently, vigorously with their prosecution of this case. They know that. I haven't made that, that is out there. But in terms of just day-to-day interaction, I expect the highest level of professionalism from them, and they get it from us. And then Ted says, it's business. And AJ says, it's business. Ted says, state police have had people follow your drivers. Yep, our drivers have been approached by the state police. They're no longer some are no longer my drivers because of that. I've had very close friends have their cell phone records subpoenaed for an indictment that never happened. There's a lot of attempts to glean more about our team by the state police. There's probably, I wouldn't put it past them to some things going on as I'm sitting here. Ted says, have you ever been followed? And Karen says, I don't know. My eyes are akimbo all the time. What's akimbo? I'm learning so many new words. Akimbo? Akimbo. Do you guys know that word? Akimbo. My eyes are akimbo all the time. I look at law enforcement differently, more warily. I don't know that I'm being followed. I've been tracked. I mean, I've been tracked on flights. I've been tracked when I've stayed in hotels. This is in, and Ted says, how do you know you're being tracked? And Karen said, I know from affidavits from the state police at the Norfolk DA's office when they were investigating me last year. I was with my closest friend trying to get away from Massachusetts, and little did I know at the time, I learned about it afterwards, that they knew what flight I was on. They knew when I landed. They knew when I came back. And it's disturbing. It's invasive. It's desperate. Ted says, getting back to sort of just distilling, what is the one thing in this case that you believe proves your innocence? Pause. Boozy Beauty says, akimbo means body posture with hands on hips and elbows turned outward. It can also describe limbs or things spread out wide or bent at sharp, awkward angles. So her eyes are maybe she didn't use that word right. They could just say some words and I'd be like, oh yeah, that's nice. Okay. What is the one thing you think proves your innocence? Karen says, John's body. No bruise. 6,000-pound full-size SUV. Not a bruise on his body. Not a fracture below his head. Ted says, the medical examiner did not rule his death a homicide, correct? Correct. Was it undetermined? Yes. Okay, you guys, can I say something about this? I have always been stuck on their argument or like their whole thing about like the medical examiner ruled it undetermined. Like that's like crazy, right? Like it should have been a homicide if she thought that's really what happened. But don't we all really think a homicide is what happened? Just not the homicide that the state police were saying? Like, right? Like we do think it was a homicide, just not their homicide. So I don't get that. Anyways, Ted says, and that doesn't get revisited, correct? AJ says, oh, good luck. Good luck trying to revisit that. I don't think it'll be revisited by her. I mean, she came to the decision of, so I don't think she's not gonna. And if she does deviate from that decision, she's gonna have to answer for that. And that will be an incredibly uncomfortable situation. I don't think that will happen. But it's very telling that their own best expert, as it pertains to the physical evidence surrounding John and John's injuries, did not rule this a homicide. And they have the burden of proof. That's one of the galling factors in this entire thing, is the Commonwealth knows that their own expert or experts will not support their prosecution of Karen. They then dismiss the case. Do the right thing. Officer Dever, just do the right thing. And it's shocking that they won't. Ted says, John's niece and nephew, who he was taking care of, essentially testified against you in the trial. How hard was that? Karen says, I knew that was coming because I read what they testified to in the initial indictment almost 3 years ago. And they're part of a well that was poisoned almost as soon as he died. They were 3 years younger then and impressionable and surrounded by adults that care for them and provide for them. And I was no longer one of those adults. And it's unfortunate, and I hope and wish for the best for them. But I've long come to terms with what's happened to the children. To the children. Ted says, has Paul O'Keefe ever made any statements to you walking by or anything? I don't know that I knew this. He hasn't in a while, but he's attempted to send me Facebook messages. It's ironic because there's a stay away order, and yet I hear, or they've attempted to send me messages, and as soon as I see the names come up, I just delete it. I'm not interested in anything he has to say to me. Interesting. Zach has a good dad joke. My dad jokes are for the grown people. Can we get a groan for Zach? That's a good one. I feel like she's not supposed to just delete it. Like, shouldn't she save that for her? Oopsies. Sorry if that layout was just all messed up. I just fixed it. What do you think might be the tenor of those messages? Negative, volatile. I mean, there was some volatility in court, and I think I'd attribute the same cause to Paul's emotions as I would to the children's. Ted says, can you feel him staring at you? Karen says, I honestly don't even know he's there anymore. I mean, I'm aware that his immediate family is in the courtroom, but there's days we come home from hearings or we come home from court, and someone close to me will say, was that so-and-so on the O'Keefe side? And I say, honestly, I almost look through them at this point. I know they're there, and my family would be there. My family is there. But the O'Keefe's presence, Paul sitting there, doesn't impact me. It doesn't bother me. I can't wait to see how some of our frenemies spin that one. That's John's brother, but I couldn't tell you from one day to the next what color shirt he was wearing. Were you distracted by the way that he was sitting with his pants all man-spreading? Ted says, if you were framed, who's calling the shots? I feel like he asked this already. You know, there's so many levels there, right? There's the troopers on the ground. There's the prosecutors. There's the DA. AJ says, that's the problem, and this is just us talking. And it's just us reading it, AJ. Just you guys having a little chit chat. But that's the problem with answering that question or trying to narrow that question. And she can answer whichever way she wants to, but it can't be one. It's not one person. It's just not. There's not a singular tip of the spear. Ted says, if that's AJ says, that's just my opinion. Ted said, yeah, I want to hear you, obviously, about that. Karen says, I just want to add that I know he answered it very pointedly, but there's a garbage in, garbage out problem that forensic scientists or civilians or even local law enforcement that's assisting the investigators, their output and their determinations are only as good as what they're given, what they're testing, what they're measuring, what they're photographing. So I don't think it's necessarily 40 different people, but I think it's garbage in, garbage out. Ted says, 5-10 years from now, where is Karen Reed? What is she doing? Karen says, I don't know what I'll be doing, but I'll be busy whatever I'm doing. And I care. And I think more about whom will I be with. And God willing, it's my parents and the people who've seen me through this. And I hope to meet more of the people that are helping to pull our team through. Ted asks, do you have the capacity to find someone new one day? Or has that all just been destroyed by all of this? Karen says, no, it's not destroyed. I didn't do anything wrong. And I cared for someone and he cared for me. And it ended tragically. And tragic things happen to relationships every day. 67 relationships exponential this morning or last night. What? 67 relationships exponential this morning or last night. So I will not be permanently broken. I'm not broken temporarily. I've just been sidelined from what I thought I was doing on this planet, and it wasn't what I thought I was supposed to be doing. But there's no irreparable damage to me or what I want out of life or what I want to make me happy. Ted asked, did you always know that you have the strength? Karen says, I could not have known that I could deal with what I'm dealing with, but I've never been deterred by anything in my life. And I've had challenges, not quite as big as this, but health challenges that severely impacted me and ruined my physical quality of life. This is more of a mental obstacle now, but I'm invigorated by challenges, and it makes me feel stronger to overcome things. And I think part of the reason I can adapt to this new normal I'm in is because I've had to do it before, and I've been strengthened by the events of my life that brought me to 2022. Yeah. Ted asks, the hundreds of thousands of people who might be watching this, what would you like to say to them? Oh, no pressure. There's hundreds of thousands of people who may be watching this. What do you want to say? Karen says, it's a good line. Thank you to the vast majority of them. And like I said earlier, only people very close to me knew the truth for a very long time. Living day to day without a job, without anything to really focus on but this case, and know that even my neighbors who I could see out my window didn't really know the circumstances. And to have hundreds of thousands of people hear this and be enlightened is just a massive relief. And the support that people come up to me, to my family. Alan and I had a meal paid for in the North End. And it was, I don't know the last time that I've done anything but tip the waiter. And that generosity, that's all helping fuel this. It helps me spiritually, it helps me financially, and just want to thank the vast majority of those people. End of interview. Thank you, Karen Ann McGill, for typing this up for us. What do you guys think? I liked that. Miss Jessica's just hitting on Fervent. Hi, Fervent, you cutie. Wow. It is really impressive to think about like the strength it takes to get through what Karen was put through and the way that she like didn't lose hope after a mistrial to still be as confident as she was. Like, that's how you know she's innocent. My reason now is going to be like, because duh, like, how do I know she's innocent? Because she told Ted Daniels that. So like somebody who's guilty and just got off on a mistrial and is approaching their next trial doesn't do these interviews. I don't care what the other people say. I have just enough stamina that we could like check out the Ted Daniels interview with her family and make a little tiny dent in it before I like go blind for the night. Are you guys interested in seeing that? I need to find it on my desktop. Let's do one more fervent break. I like when we get to have 2 fervent breaks. Let's do another fervent break and I'll pull that up and we'll see what's going on in that interview. We don't really hear from her family in that way, like with all 3 of them together and in between the trials. So that will be kind of fun. Let's do Hank and Lally and then we'll come back and do that. Zach, I told you I don't sleep. We'll start it. We'll just make a little dent. And then we'll see. I'm taking Carter swimming tomorrow, which I told you guys, it's much easier. The days when I get to take him swimming, it's much easier than a day like today where I didn't get to take him swimming. And that was harder. We'll do Hank and Lally. I'll pull that up. We'll see what's going on. And then we'll come right back. See you guys in a minute.
Been biting my tongue for so long. Fuck you, Hank. Think you're better than me. Fuck you, Hank. You are not Lally. Fuck you, Hank. Think you're better than me. Fuck you, Hank. But why don't we see? I'm a basic kind of guy, I really don't need a flaunt. Smoking 6 packs a day and I'm happy as a hog. All I do is mumble, do I really need any lungs? The trial 1 jury was just like me, they were hung. Trial 2 came around and you wanna bench me? Not 1 guilty vote was embarrassing to see. Need to remind you that my jury was 9-3. Take your little OUI and get about the scene. Fuck you, Hank, Hank. Think you're better than me? Fuck you, Hank. You are not Lolly. Fuck you, Hank. Think you're better than me? Fuck you, Hank. Well, why don't we see? Oh, I know what will get us the win. Ask Rachel about his fucking ham sandwich again. That'll prove this beyond all reasonable doubt. Oh, who am I kidding? This shit is a rout. You took this case so damn personally, and I hold that opinion to a scientific certainty. You weasel face, fuck bet, Arca Major P. Even with all the help you got from Beverly, standing ovation. What a robust cross. Psych. Your nerdy ass looks so fucking lost. Just think, $500,000 was all it cost to get our asses kicked in the fucking law. Fuck you, hey, hey. Think you're better than me? Fuck you, hey. You are not Lolly. Fuck you, hey. Think you're better than me? Fuck you, hey. Well, why don't we see? How do we see? Hey.
How'd that case with the middle school teacher go? I hear you're taking more L's than the Commonwealth. Hey!
Waiting for your response, Becky. Yeah, yeah.
Today we say a prayer for Adam Lally, the once mediocre prosecutor who stayed mediocre. May the Lord hear our prayer.
In the words of Auntie Bear, speak up loudly. Got a $500,000 cause of your incompetency. Calling me a nerd with creativity. Your shit was boring just like your delivery. Your monotone ass can't demand more cash. Only idiot to use a hung jury as a brag. A lowly ADA, so you must be a hack. You don't wanna see me get spanky on the track. You ain't good enough to have a private practice. You ain't smart enough to hide your malpractice. I was the star, you were like a fading actress. Hope Welcher spread his load all over your mattress. I know a lot of times that raps be fiction, but really let these next two bars sink in. You ain't skilled enough to get a conviction, even when in a corrupt jurisdiction. As for the aftermath, well, I'm making more cash. As for you, I think I saw you on DoorDash. Man, I kinda feel bad, sitting back with a laugh, counting up on my stacks. But let me end this quite plainly, just in case that your memory's hazy. It was confirmed on the stand that you're lazy when Rosemary made you her baby. All they wanna baba.
I'm just like over here hanging out like I don't have something to do. You should all go become a member of Fervent because he has a new song that's members only right now, so I can't play it for you guys. And it's so good. This is so true. FKR does everything better. I'm a brat, 49 gets it. Okay. We're just going to see how far we can get in this before I lose my eyesight. Don't let me read you this whole thing. 76 pages. That's not happening. But we'll start it. We'll just see what's up. Because I like this little title. My daughter will be free. Karen Reed, parents of Karen Reed, woman charged in Boston officer's death. My daughter will be free. Interview with Ted Daniel, Boston 25 News, August 7th, 2023. So we're going back in time now. August 7th, 2023. So this is before the first trial. We're going way back. And thank you, Karen McGilligan, for transcribing this for us. Okay. Let me just get situated. So Miss J. Reed is Janet Reed, Mrs. Reed. I'm just going to say mom, just to make things easier. Mr. Daniel. Oh, God. We have new title for Ted. Okay. Okay. Janet starts this off and says, keep asking her to come and stay. Sometimes she gets nervous, scared, you know. Are we talking about a dog or Karen? Wait. Keep asking her to come and stay. Sometimes she gets nervous, scared, you know. Does it say where they are? Nope. Nope, we're talking about Karen, not a dog. Keep asking her to come and stay. Sometimes she gets nervous, scared, you know. Ted says, yeah, yep. And then mom says, and she says no because her fear is that they're going to arrest her. Which is how I know they're not talking about a dog. you know, like, which is what they did the second time. And she just does, Ted says, on like some super, I feel like we just jumped into the middle of a conversation. What's going on here? On like some superseding, yeah, something ridiculous. And she, which is what happened the second time. And so she just says she doesn't want us to be embarrassed in our neighborhood by having, it was bad enough. The day that they came to question her, and she says, I don't want to do that to you and dad. So I'll face the music by myself at home. So, and then Ted says, and have her lawyers said that could be something that could happen, that they could, I know the feds do that a lot. The feds, Janet says, do they? Ted says, like if they don't, like if you don't take their plea deal, let's say they have some sort of case involving racketeering or money laundering, what they'll do is they'll add like a tax component, and then they'll, if you don't take their, you saw that in the Varsity Blues case. What is this conversation? His interview with Karen was so focused. This feels like a Gretchen Voss interview with all the college admissions scandals. The people who didn't take the deals, they all got new indictments with more charges. This is Ted talking. It's kind of like it's an arm twister, and they're nasty about it though. They'll jam you up. And then Bill Reed says, I don't think there's any expectation that would happen. Bill Reed's like, can you guys stay focused? Bill Reed's literally like, okay, that's not going to happen. So do you have any questions about like anything that is going to happen? And then Ted says, you just have to be careful. What is okay. I'm lost too. Literally, what is going on? Bill says, there's been too much publicity now. Also, wait, just for 1 sec. I just want to go back. So August 7th. So this is a week before Michael Morrissey's hostage video. 2 weeks before August. I used to know this 20th or something. 14th. Interesting. Okay. So Ted tells them they have to be careful. Bill says there's too much publicity, too much of, the tide has changed. And, we're strengthened by it all. And then an unknown person says, all right, we'll just direct the questions and then we'll be, all right, just tell me when you're ready. Okay. What was that then? Ted says, we're good. Bill says, good luck, honey. And it makes it look like he says it to Ted because then Ted responds, yeah, no, if you need good luck, honey, to Ted. I might be losing it. Okay. If you need a break, want to take some water, you just tell us and we'll take a break. Bill says, do you anticipate having my son join us? Ted says, yeah, I'm going to have, and then an unknown person says, yeah, the son's alone. It's like the voice of God. The son's alone. Probably do him separately. We're going to have him, Bill says, all right, sounds good. Ted says, interview him separately at the end. All right. Why don't we start? Yeah, that's a good idea. Why don't you guys start now? Janet, why don't you tell me a little bit about you? Okay. Interesting prologue. This is like cute little prologue. Okay. Karen's mother, stay-at-home mom. I was a teacher for a short time before I met my husband, and then I started having kids. So then he went to school got his PhD. We moved away to Wisconsin and then Virginia, and he went to Virginia Tech where he graduated. And so I just, I was happy doing that because the kids. When I was a young girl, my mother worked from the time I started school in kindergarten, so I never had her there. I mean, she was home when she came home from work, but she worked full time. So I missed that. And I don't know. I didn't realize it at the time, but once I had kids, I felt like I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be there to pick them up from school and that. So that's kind of what my life has been. And I did a little bit of subbing once the kids grew up, but that was it. Just for like a year. And very close to Karen. And of course, Nathan. And there, that's just what I do. And Karen and I, have a lot of things in common. We like a lot of the same things. We spend a lot of time together. We go to the beach in the summer and we just kind of have the same sense of humor and we enjoy each other. So yeah, that's like the ultimate goal of life, like for a parent to be like, I just like enjoy my child. Like now my grown child, I like choose to spend time, like that's a really nice relationship. Ted says, and just Karen and Nathan. And Janet says, yeah and no. I have a daughter, Elizabeth, too. Yeah, I have Elizabeth. Are we side-eyeing Elizabeth? Poor Elizabeth. Ted says, okay, and where does she fall on? Well, Elizabeth is the youngest. Karen is in the middle. Elizabeth is shy and nervous about the situation. So it's something that we just don't include her. Just she's asked and we respect that. Okay, that makes a ton of sense. Thanks for clearing that up. Elizabeth said she doesn't want to be a part of this. And Ted was like, I'll make her a part of it anyways. She gets very nervous and upset over things. And so we haven't even spoken of her, because we just feel that it's not necessary. So you guys forget that part of all the things they should have redacted. She asked to stay out of it at this point. I mean, she's in it in her heart and everything, but not physically, to the press and everything. Ted takes the hint and changes the subject. Was Karen raised in Massachusetts, and in what towns? Janet says, yeah, Karen actually she was born in Brockton when my husband got a job at Bentley. And then we moved away for him to get his PhD. And so she lived about 5 years in Virginia, in Blacksburg. And then we moved back here, moved to Brockton for about a year. And then we moved to Taunton. We built a house in Taunton. And then she grew up and, went to Coyle Cassidy High School and then went to Bentley, where her father, was hoping she'd go into accounting, but she chose finance. In my mind, those are the same things. I literally don't know that. I thought accounting was finance. This is what I mean by I don't understand people who have like real jobs. You sit at a desk and do job things. And she lived in the city for about 15 years and then got her master's and then got a job at Fidelity. And Ted says, so born, you were in Taunton when she was born? Yeah. But she was only there a year when we moved away. You moved to Virginia? Yeah, Ted. Take notes. We just said that part. And then you came back. Sorry, Brockton. I feel like they're like more awkward with each other than he was with Karen and AJ and the one we just listened to. She was 5 years old when she moved back. She grew up in Taunton. Where's Coyle Cassidy? Right outside downtown Taunton, off Broadway, Taunton Green. Okay. And then Ted says to Bill, and Bill, you want to tell me I know we've talked before, but Bill's like, I got it from here. This is so funny. Ted's being all bumbly and weird. And then Bill's like, okay, yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having us and for the invitation. And I guess the best thing I can say about myself now is I'm the proud father of Karen Reed. She has helped define who we are as a family in terms of her strength, her courage, her factual innocence. But my wife and I are from the North End and she's from the South End. And we've been married 48 years this coming August. Well, this month now. You guys, their anniversary is coming up. And I've been at Bentley most of my life. I'm completing my phase out now, 45 years. I'll draw my last paycheck June of 2024. And so it's been a career where I've taught so many students in accounting. I've had the privilege of being department chair for 5 years and more recently, dean of business. And so it's been a great run. I'm happy for it. I miss many of my colleagues back there. I hope I can get back some time to say goodbye, and I certainly appreciate all their support. And one of the big thrills was when Karen studied there and then pursued a master's there and said, I want to come back and teach. And I think taught for upwards of 12, 13 years in the Department of Finance as an adjunct lecturer. And she typically taught on Thursday night. And so I would kind of hang around, wait to walk her out to her car. I love them. And it gave us, some father-daughter time. So it's been very special. But, we're going on 19 months during this ordeal. And it's very, very, very stressful. The stress, the anxiety, the worries, we just want it to end. And we want our daughter back. We want her to be free. We believe it will happen. And so we've been strengthened by the outpouring of support we have seen. I mentioned to you that I saw you last Tuesday at the hearing. Nearly 1,000 people, the vast majority I do not know. I don't think my wife knows, who have supported the Karen Reed Legal Defense Fund. Some of them giving very ample amounts of money on a recurring basis, but others giving small amounts, modest amounts, $5, but with very touching sentiment, saying, quote, I'm giving from what I have. I wish I could give more. And next week when I get paid, I'll be back to give you more. And that's so touching to us. And when we were in court last week, the hundreds of people who are outside supporting us, we're thankful for Aidan Carney for his support and for folks like you, folks molded in the image of, I guess I grew up. I remember I was at Babson working on my master's and Watergate was unfolding. And we learned of the courage of intrepid investigative journalists like Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein in the Washington Post. And so it's good to see the type of strength among investigative reporters in this community because as Dave Yannetti says, one of our attorneys, sunlight is the best disinfectant. So that's a brief history on us. Okay, first of all, I love Bill Reed so much because the question was, and Bill, do you want to tell me I know we've talked before, but, and he said all that good stuff. He had that ready. Legal tubes, my heart. Good dads are the best. My dad we love a good dad. Okay. Side note, you guys, can I just pause for a second now that we're on dads? My dad is biking in the Pan Mass Challenge this weekend, and it's his 22nd year riding. For anybody who doesn't know, the Pan Mass Challenge is a fundraiser for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, and it's a 2-day, 212-mile bike ride or something insane. They start in Wellesley and they bike to the end of the Cape. It's truly bananas. I do not know how he does it. This is his 22nd year doing it. He's raised in his entire time doing it, over $400,000 for Dana-Farber. And he has a whole group of his friends that he rides with now. They have a good friend that they're supporting, that their team is supporting. And it's just it's so impressive. So I shout out to my dad. Thank you, Mitchell. Go Emily's dad. And then I thought about posting his fundraising link on Twitter, and then I realized everybody's crazy and I can't do that anymore. And that made me annoyed. But it's really, I'm just very impressed by him. Anyways, back to Ted. Most people know Karen from what they see on the TV footage from the courtroom. Who is the Karen that you know? Janet says, she is one of the most generous people I think I've ever met in my life. If they go into the city, Bill and Karen, because she has a lot of doctor's appointments, and usually, with the pandemic, we couldn't both go. So Bill would drive her and he would go in with her. And if we they stopped at the light and someone's panhandling, and Bill will take $5. She'd put another 20 in and she'd say, Dad, we just were so lucky what we were born into. This person might not have been. She's always been that way. Even when she worked in the city many, many years. She was just warm to everybody. Fidelity used to have a Christmas fund for children. They would give to the children in the neighborhoods. And one of the PMs stopped her one day and said, the room where they were collecting all the toys, he said, Karen, 90% of the names on the cards are from you. And he said, I know you, and he said, quote, it's amazing that, you're so thoughtful. And it was that way with everything. At church, I mean, she worked in a nursing home and she loved working with the elderly and she would read to them. I mean, she's always been that way since a little girl, just very, very giving and very protective of others. If she saw someone getting hurt, she would step in. I mean, one story that stays with me and always will till I die is I was bringing her home from high school, and we were at a very busy corner in Taunton. And across the street, two boys were beating up on this kid who had glasses, and he was kind of overweight. And he was just like, they were just making fun of him, and they started really hitting him. And she was in the car with me, and the light hadn't even changed to green. And she jumps out of the car and goes over to help the kid with, they weren't babies. They weren't little children that maybe couldn't hurt her. They were boys, grown boys. And she just felt she had to protect that boy. I mean, I yelled at her all the way home because I said, you're putting yourself in a position. But she's very giving and caring. And that's the most I can say, the best I can say, and maybe the worst I can say. Ted says, how old was she when that happened? She was probably about a sophomore in high school because she didn't have her license yet. But I know she was in high school because I was driving her home. Bill says, I remember that incident was this past June. I had taken her for her medical appointment at Brigham and Women's near the Fenway area. And then he has a little coughing fit and he needs some water. And then the voice of God says, will it show if it puts it right below right here? And they're trying to figure out the microphone. Bill says, I was saying, so that incident my wife was speaking about, I was bringing my daughter home this past June. She had gone for her monthly treatment at Brigham and Women's in the Fenway section. We were coming west on Route 9, and as I approached the light, a gentleman was off to our left, and I was in the passing lane or the leftmost lane, and he was near the guardrail, and he was seeking some financial help. And she said, Dad, do you have anything? And I said, yeah. And I had some loose change and a few dollar bills and a $5 bill in the center console. And I slowed down and I put down the window and I took the $5 and I called him over and I held out the $5. And then this arm came over my chest with a $20. So this gentleman, all right, picked up $25 that Saturday morning, thanked us profusely, although I swear when he thanked us, he was looking by me into my daughter on the passenger seat. And as we drove away, I said, Karen, you don't have many 20s by my recollection. She says, Dad, I don't, but I think he needs it more. And that's where the story, because I called my wife after I dropped her off. I said, she touches me all the time with her love and with her strength. Oh my God. What sweet that she touches me all the time with her love and with her strength. Sometimes, during this ordeal, I get worried, stressed, and she'll say, Dad, we got this. We got this. We were built for this. And boy, she just strengthens my backside. When I hear that, I say, well, I'm just so proud to be the father of Karen Reed. Oh my God. Oh my God. Ted says, so you find out that out of everyone in the family, that she might be the one who's able to dig deep in that resilience. Bill says, it's probably because of all the medical issues she's had. I mean, Janet could speak to that better. But we've spent time at Mass General, Boston Medical Center, and she did not get the answers or the treatment that she felt she needed. And so we probably spent, 3 or 4 years, upwards of 20 visits to the Cleveland Clinic to address some of her medical issues. And we'd drive out, we'd fly out. And I think that's where she, determined that resolve, that strength, that inner fortitude. And I would say to her, because I know she spent 2 nights in jail. One night when she was charged originally for vehicular homicide, and then when they upcharged for second-degree murder. And I just can't think of my daughter in jail. And she'd say, Dad, that's not the worst thing. The worst thing is being in a hospital bed in so much pain through her redacted medical issues. That's pain. That's misery. That's what I dread. I can handle this, Dad. Ted says, when did she receive those diagnoses? Janet says, oh, it's probably over. She started getting sick at around 24 years old. So it was either they weren't sure if she had redacted or if she had redacted. So she had major operations at Boston Medical. So that was around 24, 25 years old. And then probably when she was in her early 30s, they discovered that she also had redacted because it's all autoimmune and they're connected in many ways, But she, just as with this case, she reached out to Alan Jackson through reading about what he did with geofence and that with the Kevin Spacey trial. And she just called him just like that. And he picked up and from then on, he decided to be on the case with us. But she did the same thing early on when she wasn't getting the answers in Boston about her physical side of things. And they didn't want to send her to the Cleveland Clinic. The doctors said, no, we have enough doctors in the Boston area and you can get the help you need here. So the problem was insurance and getting them. They didn't want to do it. Freaking insurance, you guys. Can I just vent about dental insurance for a second? My son he had to get 2 teeth pulled. It's a long story. That was a whole insurance issue. Finally got that done. So they had to put 2 spacers in. It's like a little cap and then a spacer. It's so cute. He has a little silver mouth now. And the other day, he just pulled out his spacer that's glued into his mouth. So freaking strong. And so we went to the dentist on Monday and I brought the spacer and she was like, oh, it's good you still have this. And he has a hard time at the dentist. And now he knows that dentist. So he knows where we are. He knows that so he's having an absolute conniption. So, and when I say conniption, so anybody who doesn't know, my son has autism. When I say conniption, it's needs 5 people to pin him down to do anything. So the dentist doesn't even look in his mouth because he's losing it so much. She asks me, how old is he? When does he turn 6? I was told her when he turned 6. She was like, okay, we can probably wait until his 6-year molars start to come in and then we can figure this out at his yearly checkup or whatever is coming up. And I said, great. And then I went to go check out and it was $150. We were there for 7 minutes. She didn't even look in his mouth. And because we had maxed out insurance from the procedure that he already had done, I paid $150 for him to kick the crap out of me. I have cuts on my arm. I have bite marks. And they didn't even look in his mouth. Insurance is so annoying. So yes, I understand this, Bill Reed. Anyways, continuing. This was Janet talking, not Bill. I get it, Janet. I understand. So Karen was dealing with insurance issues too, because insurance is the worst for everybody. She ended up going through the insurance company on her own to the doctor who makes the decisions. And, her doctor here wasn't very happy about that she did that. But she said, I have to speak for myself because they have other patients and I might not be that important at this time, But to me, it's my life and I have to do it. And she ended up getting it approved by doing it on her own. So it's always been, she struggles to find the answers, but she finds them. And and I mean her relationship, this last one, with John and his children, she was always there for them. She was always doing, it's just been who she is. Ted says, how did her and John meet? They met through his sister. His sister was friendly with a girl that Karen was friendly with. They were both all from Braintree, and they went to something, maybe a function, and she met John there, and they dated maybe a few months, not very long. But she wasn't well at the time, and it didn't work out. She wasn't, all that enthused with the situation. So that was it. And then I think I remember something about he contacted her through Facebook, wondered if is this Karen Reed that I know? And that was the year before the pandemic, or just a few months before, actually. We went into the heavy part of the pandemic, and they started to see each other again. And of course, by that point, he had lost his sister, and Karen didn't know that because she wasn't really close to the sister. Lost his sister, and the sister's husband died a few months after she died. And so the kids were left with who's going to care for them. And John said he would. And that's how it started. So from the second time that she started dating John, he already had custody of the children. And Ted says, and how would she describe John to you? Janet says, very easygoing, very sweet. I would say, Bill, huh? Bill says, conservative. Janet says, yeah. Bill says, sweet. Really cared for those children, his niece and nephew. And, what he took on was just a monumental task. And he showed a great love for those two children. And we knew the children ourselves, and we had spent time with John on a few occasions. We had him at the house maybe a couple of times. And there was a social event in August in Attleboro that he attended with my daughter, and we were there. And we were at his house in Canton, the only time we had visited there, on Christmas Eve. And he just was a very caring individual. I mean, he did work for my daughter at her home, put in a new bathroom or a new shower in the downstairs lavatory, new lighting fixtures. He put in a new heating unit in terms of a thermostat that could be controlled. And Janet adds, while she was out. Ted says, was her decision to live in Canton based on the fact he lived there? Janet says, no, she didn't. She stayed in Canton a lot, but she didn't live there. She maintained her home. She probably was there maybe 4 or 5 days a week, and the rest of the time she was at home. Ted asked, did she ever talk about a future with John? Janet says, a few times. They never really talked about marriage. I don't know how he felt. I can't speak for him. But I think Karen felt that he was just overwhelmed with what he was dealing with. And, liked them together, but, wasn't thinking far ahead. Maybe because the kids, the ages they were at, maybe he was waiting until they got a little bit older. They were just hitting the girl was just hitting the teens, and the boy, kind of active. So yeah. But no, they didn't really talk about, they just seemed to be in a happy place, together. Ted says, and spending a lot of time together. Bill says vacations together, going out together. The nephew was quite a ball player. So they'd be going to his Little League park or that Little League park or together. Janet says, yeah. And also they stayed at her house a lot, because if he worked like a night shift or a long shift because something was going on in town, like a protest and he had to work extra hours, the kids would stay at her house. I don't know if I knew that. The kids would stay at her house. And so that was maybe at least once or twice a month they would stay with her. Ted says, take me back to January 2022. How did you learn of John's death and what did Karen tell you? Bill says, well, that night, approaching the storm, my wife and I retired, and maybe it was 6:25 as best I recall. I had my phone in my downstairs office and it was on its charger and it rang and she said, Bill, I think your phone. This is like such a dad story, like starting like way back. My phone was on the charger. Bill, I think your phone. So I ran to it and missed it. And when I saw who it was from, I was concerned. I mean, it's 6:30. It's snowing crazy at this time. And so I tried calling her back. And then I got a text from her. And that's when I learned that there had been, something had happened. And next thing I know, she was in the hospital in Brockton. So I called my son. I said, I got to get to her. She wants me to get there. And so I drove up there with my son. My wife stayed home and was at Good Samaritan Hospital. Came into the waiting room. There were some family members. I think John's father was there. I went up to him and asked him what happened and asked him how things were. And at that point, I did not know that he had passed at all. And then one of the nurses came out and said, are you Mr. Reed? I said, I am. Says, your daughter is asking for you, but she does not know that John has been declared dead. I said, okay. I said, do you want to tell him? And then Janet says, tell her. They're so cute. Oh my gosh, they're so cute. Tell her, or do you want us to tell her? Or do you want to tell her whether us are right there, just in case as support? I said, I can tell her. So they brought me to her room and she was there. She was on the bed and I went in. They closed the door behind me and she said, Dad, thanks. Thank you for coming. Thanks. I'm so glad you're here. And we hugged and said, Dad, how's John? Tell me. I said, well, and I got a little skittish. I said, I really don't know. She said, Dad, be straight with me. How is John? And I went up to her and I hugged her. I said, he's gone. And at that point, she slithered off the bed onto the floor. And I knelt down on my knees and I hugged her. And she gathered herself and got back up on the bed. And so that was quite the morning. I think we left there. I forget which time. I really don't know. I'm going to say around noon, but certainly the records would show when she was discharged. And that's how the day evolved. Ted says, she goes to your house. She does. Again, my son had taken me and he was waiting outside. And so I said to Karen, I said, come on, come home with your mother and I. She said, Dad, I can't go home. And so she hopped in the car with my son. She said, I want to see the children. I said, Karen, it's bad out here. You don't want Nathan to drive all the way to Canton. And we're in Brockton or Stoughton, wherever this hospital is. And he says, I don't mind, Dad. And so off we went. And then we ended up there for maybe 40 minutes. Ted says, Karen spent time with the children that John had adopted. Bill says, as I recall, we went in. John's father was there. The niece was there. John's mother was there. When we did arrive, John's brother Paul was outside shoveling a path for entrance to the house. And when we went in, Karen went up to the niece, hugged her, and they both cried, I guess. And then the nephew came in later because nephew had stayed at a friend's house the night before. And then because this is what you told me, right? Janet says, and then he came in the kitchen. And then Ted asks, when did you learn that law enforcement, they were looking at Karen as a suspect? Bill says, I did not sense anything was going on. I had no reason to. I didn't see any law enforcement at the hospital. She was free to leave with me. It wasn't until our drive back home. So we left there. We cleaned her car. She got some of her personal items, some of her clothes, and we left. My son and I cleaned her car, and I drove her vehicle. And on the way home, again, it's been more than 18 months now, but I think she got a phone call. She tried to reach a lawyer. She said, "Dad, I think I may need to get some legal representation." I said, "Okay, fine." And so she reached out to this lawyer. I can't tell you who it was, but it was a name. But it was a name that was familiar with the family, not my family, but that she had become familiar with through other situations in John's family. And I remember, I believe she reached him. And again, I'm driving and I'm doing all I can to just keep this truck on the road. And I believe he said, "Well, I've represented those members of the family, and probably there'd be a conflict here." And I think sometime during that ride back to Dighton through 138, law enforcement reached out to her and said they wanted to have a conversation and when would she be home. So we just gave a best estimate within about an hour. And that's when, but I still can't tell you today that at that particular time, I can't say that I had any sense of what was about to unfold. Yeah, I'm assuming that was Paul's attorney. I just did not. How could you? I look back and say I was terribly naive, but I was also very trusting. And I know my daughter, and I believe that nothing happened of a nefarious nature that she was involved with, whatever it was that led to his passing. And when law enforcement came, they came to the front door. They asked her, as I best recall, to come out and have a conversation with them. They asked her to come outside. And I invited them in. They just wanted to get her car so badly. I said, "Weather is too bad, come in." So they came into the garage area. My daughter's truck is parked outside the garage area. They came into the side garage and I said, "Why don't you please come in? I know there's no wind in the garage, but it's still cold." And they came in. I asked them to put on a mask because it was COVID-19, right? And we were in the height of it in many ways. And my wife and I are in our 70s. And they came in. I asked them if they'd like some coffee or tea, asked them to sit down. And no, they just stood in my living room. I remember my daughter saying, "I want my lawyer present." And they said, "Well, all we want to do, we just want to find some information. We just want to learn what happened. That's all." So, that's when I sensed the tenor had changed. They seemed uncomfortable. And it certainly wasn't anything on my part. I had said to them, I'd always respected law enforcement. My father-in-law was a former policeman for 29 years. I had never had any sense or any reason to question or fear law enforcement or their intentions. And Ted says, "And that's when they towed the car?" Bill says, "That's when they towed the car. They took her phone. They took her phone that day and they still haven't given it back. They took her phone and they towed her SUV." Yes. Ted asks, "And when does the arrest take place?" Bill says, "So that was on Saturday afternoon, January 29th. They towed the car in my video, which is not a Ring video, but a hardwired alarm.com." Bill says, "And I believe that's available, on the internet." They towed it at about 16 minutes after 4. It was still light out. The sun did not set on that date until 4:53. So they towed it. Clearly, it was put on the flatbed of Diamond Towing at about 16 minutes after 4. And that's when they went. And then Janet said, "But he asked you, when did they arrest her?" Bill says, "I'm sorry." Janet says, "How many days?" I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday. And Bill says, I would rather speak cryptically. I don't want to be indicting of, I say law enforcement rather than Massachusetts State Police. I don't want to mention who the officers were. He was still trying to even be nice to Proctor at that time. Because this is still very delicate. There's no gag order. It has been denied, but I understand. Ted says, during your first discussions with Karen, did she believe that she may have hit John? Bill, no. Janet, no. So all those people on the internet who are like, Bill said that she thought she may have struck something. She felt she may have struck something. No. Right before that, she says, they say no. She did not believe she may have hit John. Can anybody get this into the internet's thick skull? She felt she struck something. She said, Dad, I think I struck something. I said, what do you mean? All right. This was in the hospital. She says, I remember, all right, backing up and hitting something, but I can't say, all right, what it was. And at this point, she's frantic, and she's crying, she's in a state of shock. And it wasn't until I arrived back with my son and saw her truck. And when I initially saw it, it was crusted in snow. I didn't see any observable damage. So whatever you think is, I'm saying in my own mind, all right? And it wasn't until later on when we cleaned off the truck, my son and I saw there was a segment of the rear taillight that was splintered. It wasn't dislodged. It wasn't, all right, totally fractured where it was no longer functional. And so, Ted asks, were there any pieces of the taillight missing? I've never heard him say this. Have we? Bill says, I did not see any. And I cleaned off the back because I wanted to be sure I could drive safely. Not only the window, but I wanted to be sure everything was free because I knew, all right, it was going to be an arduous drive from Canton back to Dighton. So I did not see anything. I didn't see red. I didn't see anything white. I didn't see anything. And I cleaned off the vehicle. Ted says, have you seen pictures of that area? And we do know, according to law enforcement, that they found 3 pieces from a taillight at Fairview Road. Bill says, well, I'm going to speak from the heart. I mean, it's been reported, and I think it's, in the court record, that when the site was searched at 6 a.m. for an hour or two, no taillight was found. Nothing was found. Taillight was found later in the evening when law enforcement was called back to the scene. And so all I can say is my daughter's vehicle was towed. It was not towed at 5:30, as some have reported. It was towed at 4:16. Ted asks, do you think that could have been an honest mistake? Bill says, no, I do not. I do not. I mean, I believe the records from court testimony would say that perhaps the timestamp on that had not adjusted for the change in season. It's just not possible. I don't touch myalarm.com. I have 3 display units in my house and in the back carriage house. At any given time, I know the date, the time, the weather, the forecast. I touch nothing. It automatically adjusts. And so you can look at the video. You can look at her right taillight. It still looks largely intact. You can look and see that it is still daylight. So these are trained law enforcement officers. They understand, all right, that a Boston police officer is dead. I don't know if you make mistakes in the gravity of that situation. Not mistakes. Boom. And there had also been an issue with the time of day, correct? That it was still light out when your camera recorded, and at 5:30 it should have been dark at the time. Bill says, well, it would have been dark at 5:30. There was no doubt about it. And there were members, usually my understanding is that, whenever a state agency would have come into a particular jurisdiction, a town or a city, and seeking, say, removal of a vehicle for impounding, You probably have. I know we had 2 Dighton police officers on the scene. I've lived in Dighton for 28 years, and I know it was one of those officers that reached out to the local towing company, Diamond Towing, from which my daughter's vehicle would be transported from my house to Canton Police Department. Not to the state barracks, which was certainly closer in Middleborough. Ted says, Karen's lawyers have raised a lot of issues with how this case has been put together. In your eyes, what is the most powerful? Janet says, there's so many things. If we sat in a room with everybody, that we'd come up with probably 200 things that each of the 5, maybe I would think, were more important than what somebody else would think. Bill coughs again. Ted says, Karen's lawyers have brought up so many things they believe are issues with this case. What do you think is the most powerful, the most glaring? Janet says, well, for me, I would start right at the beginning and say the car itself. That would be because I didn't go to the hospital. I didn't go to the house. So the first thing I saw was, or heard was, what I felt was untruths about when the car was taken. And I watched them tow the car away. And so I know it was light out. It wasn't dark. And I know they came early and the time is just off. And I don't understand why you would do that. And then my other thing, which is piggybacks on that, why didn't it go to the Middleborough barracks? That's where they would normally take a car to analyze it and everything. Instead, they went to the Canton Police Department. So those were the 2 things that just instantly, because I didn't know about the case at that time, other things popped up along the way, but those were the 2 things right away. I knew that there was something wrong right there. And of course, many things have happened since then that have come to light that are not true. I can't, can I just pause for 1 second? Also, doing that thing again where I literally can't see. I can't even, I know I've thought about this before, but anytime I hear it like this, what they were this is gaslighting to an extreme that I can't even imagine how that shakes your sense of reality. It's you remember what time the car got towed. You have it on your video footage. And then the police are like, no, we took it at 5:30. Oh, you guys are just wrong. Oh, maybe I need to turn this on. Whoa. I just can't even imagine how that just how do you ever trust anything ever again? How do you ever, it's your entire sense of the world is just thrown up in the air and then crashed down in a whole different way. Yeah, thank goodness for Barros. Barros gave precise times. He arrived at the residence at 3:27 p.m. Yeah, he said on his report exactly the time that they cleared the scene was 4:16. Good job, Barros, for showing us that there are still good people in the world. Some of them are police officers, because everybody else involved in this, you wouldn't know that. Okay, I can do 5 more minutes of this, and then we're going to put a bookmark in it. So Bill says, early on, we have 2 very intrepid private investigators. And early on, also intrepid is such a cute dad word. Oh, these young bucks, they're just intrepid private investigators. And early on, we learned that Fairview Road had been plowed at least twice. Karen's investigators have interviewed that individual, the plow driver. And I remember Attorney Yannetti saying in my presence early on, no body, no case. Because certainly If you would have seen, you would expect that with the snowstorm developing and still only traces of snow in those early morning hours, which, according to law enforcement, my daughter struck him roughly 12:30, 12:35. Oh, their original timeline was closer to their final timeline. Just took a little detour to 12:45 in Lally's opening. Interesting. And he lie there and, all right, passed away in that spot. You would expect someone who's plowing that street would have seen that. He was a big man, John O'Keefe, a solid 210 pounds, 6'2". He would have seen him lying there. It's not, he didn't just make one passage, he made 2 passages, and that's from our private investigators. First time I viewed the autopsy photos, and then I'd already seen my daughter's vehicle, the scant damage on the splintered right taillight. I knew something didn't add up. Our investigators have also found, through their interviewing multiple people who have been attacked by the dog that was part of the ownership of 34 Fairview, multiple people and multiple dogs. Ted says, do they have affidavits and statements from those people? Bill says, I can't say. I don't want to say, but I believe the answer is yes. Oh, thanks. But I could be wrong. There's just so much evidence, but I know they have been interviewed, and so that is factual. That dog, all right, has attacked humans, and we've seen the autopsy photos. You've seen the right arm. That's not road rash. Well, that's what they were going with at that time. The dog bites on John's arm were road rash. Honestly, road rash would even make a little bit more sense than tail light. They should have stuck with that. And think of some other things. Think of my daughter backing up that morning at roughly 5 o'clock, 5:03, to go out and search for John O'Keefe. She backs up in her Lexus, her 6,000-pound Lexus, and comes, according to testimony in court, close, but doesn't strike John O'Keefe's Chevy Traverse. Well, I just asked your viewers, look at that video. It's out there. Look at that video. Put it on your laptop, put it on your iPad, put it on your desktop. And as my daughter's car approaches it, look at it frame by frame. And you tell me whether or not the O'Keefe vehicle, the left rear wheel, does not jettison forward upon impact and return to its previous position when my daughter pulls away. That can't just be happenstance. And what about the missing video from the town library at roughly the 2 or 3 minutes when my daughter would have been driving back? Had she struck and mortally wounded John O'Keefe and damaged her vehicle, ask yourself the question, would not that video have been shared with us? Instead, if she hadn't done it and her vehicle was intact with no splintered element of her right rear taillight, so now it's missing. So it's very, very troubling. But I will tell you this, I'm absolutely hopeful, and I believe in my heart, my family does also, there are honorable men and women in this Commonwealth who have taken oaths to defend our rights, our liberties, this Constitution, men and women of integrity. This will end. This will end. My daughter will be free. This will end. Bill, it kind of did and kind of is still going in a different way. Is there any doubt in your mind that that's how her taillight was damaged due to that video? I've seen that video. I see what appears to be the wheel of John O'Keefe's car move forward. Bill Reed for president. He's almost old enough. No doubt. Bill says, no, I'm a reasonable man, and my daughter was the type of individual, when she stayed at our house those 2 nights, and we're still in the embryonic stage of this, I lied on the big couch. She stayed on the love seat, and I remember her saying to me, Dad, if I hurt John O'Keefe, I'll take what's coming to me. So my daughter is a strong woman, but she never struck him. And that's how that vehicle was damaged. And there is no doubt in my mind. There are too many question marks that surround this case, this investigation. My daughter has been wrongfully charged, and the truth will come out. Again, honorable men and women in positions of power, honorable men and women with integrity and character who love this country will not allow this. My daughter will not spend time in prison. Ted says, it has been reported that the FBI is investigating this. Have you been subpoenaed, or do you know anyone directly that has been subpoenaed? Bill says, the answer to both questions, no. I do not know firsthand if that is true. I'm aware of the reports. I have not been subpoenaed. My wife hasn't. No members of my family have been subpoenaed. And do we know anyone firsthand? I do not. No one. Have you been contacted by anybody who may have filed a complaint with the FBI or raised questions about this investigation? Nope. I'm anxious for answers. I'm anxious to be free. I'm anxious for my family to go on living. But we just wait. We hope. We pray every day. We draw our strength from our daughter. I think that feels like a good place to stop. We draw our strength from our daughter. Okay. That's where I have to end for tonight. Otherwise, this is like why I can't read books, because once I start something, I need to finish it. And then I don't sleep. And I think I need to sleep now. I really, truly appreciate you all so much that it's 1:30 in the morning and you are here listening to me read Babylon about this transcript. I think this is so interesting, and I really like getting to hear from them directly in this kind of like capacity. And I appreciate that you guys care about this too, because otherwise I would just be sitting here reading it to myself. That feels more lonely than getting to hang out with you guys. Like Nate Taylor, who sent $2 and said, I can't wait to see AJ get Michael Proctor on the civil stand. Yeah, for real. There's still, like, when people talk about like this being over, it's like, this is just getting started. Like, somebody who was being mean about FOIA stuff said that I came in after the fact. Like, this is the fact. It's still just starting. Like, there is no after the fact in this. Like, yes, Karen is freed, but like all the big questions that they're asking in 2023, we still don't have answers to definitively. We have like more evidence and speculation, and we have a better kind of like picture of what was happening that night. Like, we still have so far to go. And I will leave you with this. We will not get to the answers that we're looking for if we do not elect Adam Deitch for district attorney on September 1st. And that is coming up. It's August 1st now. As of, wasn't when we started this, it is now. And we have 1 month to do every single thing that we can to make sure that Adam Deitch is the person sitting in that district attorney's office, so that we can get the answers that Bill Reed deserves. You guys, do it for Bill Reed. Adam Deitch needs to win this election for Bill Reed. I will leave you with that. You guys are the best. I will see you again very soon. And I will have the FOIA site updated for you by sometime tomorrow, or maybe right now, since I'm just still going. Good night, everybody.
If you need a place to breathe, some stress to just relieve, then come watch Emily see, where we keep it drama free. We want justice for John O'Keefe, Aiden and Kelsey, waved bye bye to Morrissey. Let's clean up Norfolk County. Emily C, the one we need, reading sidebars with Corey, writing Hank diaries, giving the people what they need. It's my pleasure to entertain, keeping you laughing makes my day. Positivity all the way. Why don't we tell Satan not today? And now it's time to say goodbye. But before we say goodnight, just keep one thing in mind. Please like, comment, subscribe.